Chapter 676. Just when Naruto gave up the control of Kyuubi and let Sasuke do whatever he wanted to protect the shinobi and the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples behind him, Naruto began to think deeply. In fact, everyone was already very clear about the current situation on the battlefield. That is, under the powerful attack of Kyuubi, everyone can only temporarily avoid the sharp edge. But can blindly escape really solve everything? At this moment, the biggest threat in front of everyone may be these powerful attacks that can absorb all the life energy in a person's body and instantly turn a person into a mummy. But once these vines condensed from Kyuubi's chakra really condense enough chakra, then the Eye of the Moon project that Uchiha Obito mentioned more than once will really be realized. Now, what they should really do is to protect the ninjas and internal energy cultivators behind them. Protecting the people behind them or protecting the entire ninja world, which one is more important? Sasuke, should we really use such a passive defensive posture to face the threat from Uchiha Obito? Naruto suddenly seemed to understand something and asked Uchiha Sasuke beside him. Hearing Naruto's question, Sasuke's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. After all, although Naruto didn't say what he was going to do, it was obvious that he was going to face Uchiha Obito with some kind of attitude. Ignoring Sasuke's reaction, Naruto directly told Sasuke all his guesses. Once Kyuubi collects enough chakra, it will definitely follow Uchiha Obito's will to use infinite Tsukuyomi. That will not only be a crisis for the ninjas, but also a huge crisis for the entire ninja world. In this case, protecting the people behind them is actually no longer the most important thing, but to prevent the implementation of the Eye of the Moon project. Only Sasuke, who was facing Naruto at this moment, could see the change in Naruto's body. Just now, Naruto was still thinking about how to protect more people, but after such a short period of confusion, he said such calm and almost cold words. Sasuke was not familiar with Watergate, otherwise, he would definitely see the mark of Watergate on Naruto's body. As Hokage, in fact, Watergate has always been subtly instilling Naruto with almost cold-blooded calculations, but Naruto has never applied this way of thinking to his own life. But now, when Naruto felt pressure from all sides, he involuntarily began to find ways to solve the problem in various ways. And the idea of the game of the superiors that Watergate had been instilling in Naruto before was also dug out from the depths of his own thoughts by Naruto, and he began to analyze everything that happened now. So, Naruto, what you mean now is that we should give up everyone behind us and let them fend for themselves, and then the two of us will attack Uchiha Obito and pull out all the bijou from Uchiha Obito's body. In this way, we can stop infinite Tsukuyomi? Originally, Sasuke thought that Naruto was not mature enough, but now it seems that he was the one who was not ruthless enough. After all, it took him so long to make up his mind to give up some people behind him to protect more people, and Naruto has directly given up all the people behind him to protect everyone in the ninja world after only a short thought. At this moment, the decision of Naruto and Sasuke was not known by Uchiha Obito. At this moment, Uchiha Obito put more of his mind on Kyuubi in his body. Constantly feeling the accumulation of chakra in Kyuubi's body, Uchiha Obito has finally noticed that Kyuubi's chakra has accumulated to an extreme, and it only needs a short preparation to cast the real infinite Tsukuyomi. Sacred Tree. Show your true form. Uchiha Obito lowered his head and murmured slightly, as if he was talking to himself and Kyuubi sealed in his body. With Obito's murmur, a huge vertical flower stem appeared directly in the center of all the vines. There was a huge bud on the upright flower stem. Although Obito did not explain it, everyone already understood in their hearts that when this flower bloomed, infinite Tsukuyomi would be cast. I'm sorry, everyone. For the sake of more people, I have to give up all of you. Naruto's eyes were also full of grief, but there was more determination. The consciousness of sacrificing a few people for the sake of more people had been placed in Naruto's heart at this moment. Although Sasuke was surprised by Naruto's decision, he had to say that after hearing Naruto's analysis, Sasuke also agreed with such a crazy action. When they saw that Nine Tails and Susanoo merged into one and the protection range was constantly shrinking, Nangongjia and Jiraiya had already begun to rush in the direction of Naruto and Sasuke. But just as they were about to approach the other side where Naruto and Sasuke were, the Susanoo controlled by Naruto and Sasuke directly jumped in the direction of Hizi Uchiha Obito. Seeing that Naruto and Sasuke left their protection range, Nangongjia and Jiraiya also quickly replaced Naruto and Sasuke's positions. Both of them summoned their large summoned beasts and familiars and directly used natural chakra to resist the invasion of the vines in front of them. Although Uchiha Obito's physical fitness has greatly improved after becoming Jubi Column Force, he is still an incomplete Jubi Column Force. It is still not enough to resist the fusion of Nine Tails and Susanoo's dual power, so Uchiha Obito was directly hit to the ground by Susanoo's punches. Just when Naruto felt that it was almost time, Susanoo raised the long sword in its hand and prepared to stab Uchiha Obito's body. Chapter 677. At this moment, Uchiha Obito was completely controlled, and there was no room for him to struggle. The long sword in the hand of Susanoo pierced directly into Uchiha Obito's body. But at this moment, the long sword had turned into a nearly conceptual weapon. It was obviously such a huge weapon, but it seemed to have directly integrated into Uchiha Obito's body. At this moment, the long sword that pierced into Uchiha Obito's body suddenly turned into golden chains that constantly rushed toward the seal of the Jubi inside Uchiha Obito's body. Although this seal was powerful, it could directly seal the Jubi inside the body. But the strength inside also represented the weakness of the outside to a certain extent. The golden chains penetrated the seal almost without any hindrance. After penetrating the seal, the golden chains didn't stop their invasion. Instead, they continued to invade the body of the Jubi, Geto Mazo. At this moment, there were a total of 7-tailed beasts sealed inside the body of the Jubi. Perhaps because the empty space of the 9 tails and the Hachibi wasn't completely absorbed into the Geto Mazo, the 7-tailed beasts still maintained their own consciousness. When they saw the golden chains extending in front of them, each tailed beast's eyes flashed with vigilance. But soon, the 7-tailed beasts perceived a very familiar aura from the golden chains. This aura seems to be the aura of that smelly fox Kurama. Among the 7-tailed beasts, Ichibi Shikaku knew the 9 tails the best. After perceiving the aura from the golden chains, Shikaku immediately said with a little surprise. "Everyone, we are trapped here anyway. If this continues, we are destined to be absorbed by the body of the Jubi, Geto Mazo. Instead of being a part of the Jubi's power, it's better to fight with all our might and see if Kurama can save us." Aisabu was the calmest among the 7-tailed beasts present. Before being sealed, Aisabu deliberately left a wisp of chakra with his will in Naruto's body. Although there was no way to clearly perceive whether his wisp of chakra had reached an agreement with Kurama, Aisabu could feel that his wisp of chakra was still there. Kurama had a fiery temper in the past. Since he could leave his chakra behind, and now 9 tails condensed his chakra into such a chain, then they should have reached an agreement. Therefore, Aisabu began to persuade the remaining tailed beasts. It has to be said that although it was difficult for tailed beasts and humans to understand each other, in the face of other tailed beasts that belonged to the same level of life as themselves, even if they didn't get along well, they could still listen to each other. Aisabu looked at the tailed beasts around him and walked directly to the front of the chain without hesitation, letting the golden chain firmly bind his body. Seeing that Aisabu was the first to step forward, the rest of the tailed beasts looked at each other and also walked directly to the front of the golden chain, letting the chain bind their bodies. "Damn it, I didn't expect that in the end. I still need that smelly fox to bring me out of this predicament. Let me say it in advance, I won't be merciful to that smelly fox just because he saved me this time." Shikaku's almost textbook arrogant attitude also made the remaining few tailed beasts laugh. The nervousness of entrusting their lives to others also involuntarily reduced by a bit. "Everyone, let's take a gamble and see if the Jubi, who is our root, can stop us from pursuing freedom," Aisabu said to the remaining tailed beasts with a little bit of excitement, and the remaining tailed beasts' eyes flashed with a trace of determination. Any creature would pursue freedom, and these tailed beasts were the same. For the 7-tailed beasts, this was a gamble with their lives. Even if they really failed and died, it was much better than waiting here slowly to be absorbed by the Jubi. On the battlefield, when Naruto saw the golden long sword in the hand of Wei Zhuang Susanoo piercing Uchiha Obito's body, he immediately began to communicate with 9 tails in his body. After all, the golden long sword was mainly condensed by 9 tails chakra, so only 9 tails could clearly sense what was happening in the seal in Obito's body. Sensing that the 7-tailed beasts were directly connected by the golden chain condensed by his chakra, 9 tails' mouth flashed with a smile. After all, these tailed beasts were of the same origin as him, it wouldn't be a problem to call them brothers and sisters. These tailed beasts who were so close to him were willing to believe in him. 9 tails' heart couldn't help but feel joy that couldn't be ignored. Naruto, everything is ready, now pull them out. There may be some obstacles, but I believe you can do it. 9 tails communicated with Naruto through his will, and Isabu on the side also sent a wisp of will to Naruto. We're begging you, you have to save us. Listening to the words of 9 tails and Sanbai, Naruto's eyes also became firm. Don't worry, I will definitely stop Uchiha Obito from carrying out his cruel plan. Naruto looked at Sasuke beside him and said to Sasuke, now it's up to us. Let's rescue the tailed beasts together and make Infinite Tsukuyomi fail. Sasuke looked at Naruto, nodded slightly, and also put his eyes on the golden long sword inserted in Uchiha Obito's body. At this moment, Obito finally understood what Naruto and Sasuke wanted to do. He directly poured all the chakra and 6 paths power in his body into Geto Mazo to ensure that the 7-tailed beasts would not be pulled out. Haya! Haya! Whether it was Naruto, Sasuke, or Uchiha Obito, they were all competing with their full strength for the ownership of the 7-tailed beasts. This was a battle that was close to a tug-of-war, a battle that could determine the future of the shinobi world directly happened on the battlefield. Chapter 678. Although Obito tried his best to control the body of the Jubi, the Geto Mazo in his body to bind the Bijou in his body, to be honest, the effect was not so good. After all, Uchiha Obito and Nangongja's group just fought, and he even released part of the Jubi's body to carry out the Eye of the Moon project, which made the strength of Jubi's body and the Jubi's body decreased to a certain extent. Under the full power of Naruto and Sasuke, the 7-tailed beasts sealed in the Jubi's body were finally unavoidably pulled out directly. The tailed beasts themselves were actually chakra with their own will. When the 7-tailed beasts were pulled out of Uchiha Obito's body, their bodies also quickly condensed and directly turned into substance. Ichibi Shikaku, Nibi Matatabi, Sanbai Isabu, Yanbi Sun Wukong, Gobi Mu Wang, Rokubi Rhino, and Nanbai Halcyon, a total of 7 huge figures directly appeared beside the Susanoo. When the Hachibi column force saw all the tailed beasts appear on the battlefield, he also immediately completely released Hachibi from his body. Hachibi's huge body was naturally very fast, and almost directly appeared beside Naruto and Sasuke. The 9-tailed beasts were directly gathered on the battlefield. At this moment, Kurama also took control of Naruto's body and said to the other 8-tailed beasts around him, I really didn't expect that there would be a possibility for us to stand together and fight side by side. 9 Tails' eyes swept over the other 8-tailed beasts around him, and there was a slight emotion in his eyes. Smelly Fox, I don't want to fight side by side with you, I'm just forced by the situation now. The other tailed beasts didn't speak, but Shikaku, who had a very bad relationship with 9 Tails, spoke first. Although Shikaku's words were very bad at the moment, no one took these words to heart. The 9 Bijou were still making a ruckus. Obito, who had withdrawn from the Rikudo mode due to the loss of his Bijou, sat on the ground with empty eyes. After all, everything happened too fast, almost in the blink of an eye, he went from a powerful existence to a living god. But now, not only was his power deprived, but the Eye of the Moon project, which had always been regarded as his life goal, now seemed to have become an illusion. At this moment, Obito has lost all hope of survival, and Uchiha Obito at the moment, because he lost the Jubi's body, he could only rely on a part of chakra in his body to maintain his life. Just as Obito was sitting on the ground with a blank look in his eyes, a black mass appeared directly next to Obito's body. Due to the weakness of his body and his mental collapse, Obito didn't notice that such an existence was approaching him at a fast speed. When the black substance came in contact with Uchiha Obito, it directly covered his whole body, and in the blink of an eye, Obito's body became invisible, and he turned into a black humanoid. This black object was none other than Black Zetsu. Just now, when Uchiha Obito sealed the Jubi in his body, Uchiha Madara was so angry, but he was stopped by someone. Even Senju Takuma, who knew Uchiha Madara best, couldn't guarantee that he could persuade Uchiha Madara, so who could persuade Uchiha Madara? Of course, it's Uchiha Madara himself, that is, Black Zetsu, the spiritual body that Uchiha Madara thought he got from the Rinnegan. It was Black Zetsu who analyzed Uchiha Madara's analysis that the Jubi in Uchiha Obito's body is not complete, and it is very likely that it will directly lose all its power under the attack of the ninja coalition. At this moment, Uchiha Obito is a living target. Because Uchiha Madara didn't have any vigilance against Black Zetsu, he also listened to Black Zetsu's advice to temporarily avoid the sharp edge and wait for the opportunity. At this moment, Uchiha Obito's body was very weak, and his spirit was on the verge of collapse. Such a situation naturally made it easy for Black Zetsu to directly control Uchiha Obito's body. Although the current Obito was no longer invincible, he still had a certain role to play. At this moment, Uchiha Obito's body has a strong vitality and a Rinnegan, so he has fulfilled the requirements of a forbidden technique, outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique. Black Zetsu's purpose was to resurrect his mother, and Uchiha Madara was the vessel that Black Zetsu had chosen a long time ago. Now that Uchiha Madara is in the state of Edo Tensei, it is naturally not enough, so Black Zetsu is now ready to control Uchiha Obito, and then use outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique, to perfectly resurrect Uchiha Madara. Once Uchiha Madara is perfectly resurrected, with his powerful strength that is very close to that of the former sage of the six paths, to be honest, it is simply a simple matter to directly collect these 9 disobedient-tailed beasts. Slowly forming hand seals, outer path, reincarnation of heaven technique was directly cast by Uchiha Obito. When the hand seals stopped, a large amount of vitality was directly released from Uchiha Obito's body, and the destination of this vitality was naturally Uchiha Madara's body. When a large amount of vitality directly poured into Uchiha Madara's body, the cracks on the body simulated by Edo Tensei slowly recovered. The black in the bottom of his eyes was gradually replaced by white, and the somewhat dull eyes also became lively, and the originally huge momentum rushed directly in all directions like a tide. Sure enough, I knew that things wouldn't end so simply. Feeling the aura of Uchiha Madara, Nine Tails murmured slightly. After all, Nine Tails was once forced to be enslaved by Uchiha Madara, and he is very clear about how terrifying Uchiha Madara is. Just now, Uchiha Madara left the battlefield was definitely not because he wanted to do something good, everything was to achieve Uchiha Madara's own plan. Tailed beasts. Uchiha Madara looked at the 9-tailed beast standing in the battlefield, and the corners of his mouth slightly opened, as if he had encountered something fun and said, "Then let's start the happy hunting time." Chapter 679. Madara-sama. Black Zetsu manipulated Uchiha Obito's body and came to Uchiha Madara's side. He knelt on the ground and saluted to Uchiha Madara. Kuroto placed his hand on Obito's left eye. Kuroto's palm gently brushed over Obito's left eye, and the Rinnegan was directly taken out without any damage. He held the Rinnegan in his hands, as if he was worshipping some kind of treasure, and put it in front of Uchiha Madara. At this moment, Black Zetsu was like a strange humanoid state molded by black mud on Uchiha Obito's body, but the almost pious appearance from Black Zetsu directly eliminated the sense of dissonance caused by such a strange posture. Why did Uchiha Madara, who was suspicious and unwilling to believe in others, believe in Black Zetsu? A large part of the reason was that Black Zetsu regarded himself as a creator from the inside out. Such a posture could not be done by simple imitation. I, Black Zetsu, present the Rinnegan to Madara-sama. I wish Madara-sama can rely on the power of the Rinnegan and your own strength to become a real god in this world. Listening to Black Zetsu's words, Uchiha Madara was actually very happy in his heart. He stretched out his hand and took the Rinnegan that Black Zetsu handed to him. He put the Rinnegan on his left eye and directly pressed the whole Rinnegan into his eye socket. At this moment, Uchiha Madara was no longer in the strange posture between life and death of the Edo Tensei. At this moment, Uchiha Madara had a real body with a real breath of life. Of course, the Sharingan in Uchiha Madara's left eye was also real. Uchiha Madara's violent press directly crushed the original eyeball in his eye socket. Blood with fragments of the eyeball directly fell on Uchiha Madara's cheek. It was such a bloody scene, but when Uchiha Madara did it, it was full of an indescribable madness. A person who completely threw the pain from his body to the back of his mind, and even treated his own body and life as nothing. Such a person was a complete madman. And once this madman had the strength that everyone feared, then this person would be an invincible expert. Uchiha Madara was such a strong person. Uchiha Madara slowly removed his hand from his left eye. He didn't know when he closed his eyes gently. A pair of Rinnegan that represented the power of the Sage of the Six Paths directly appeared in Uchiha Madara's eyes. Gently turning his neck and shaking his body, Uchiha Madara's body, there was a constant crisp sound of bones hitting his body. While moving his body, Uchiha Madara's eyes slowly wandered back and forth from the nine-tailed beasts in front of him, as if looking at a stack of snacks and worrying about which one to eat first. When they saw that Uchiha Madara's eyes were Rinnegan, in fact, the hearts of the nine-tailed beasts were faintly filled with fear. After all, only people who have seen how powerful the Sage of the Six Paths is, will know how difficult it is to resist the Rinnegan. Uchiha Madara gently wiped the blood on his cheek and the broken eyeball fragments. Although there was some blood left, he was too lazy to care about it. Just when Uchiha Madara was about to act, the four Kages, Nangongja, and Jiraiya, who were originally scattered around the four-tailed beasts, also came to the side of the nine-tailed beasts to fight together. Uchiha Madara directly cast his eyes on Senju Takuma in the crowd, who was also wearing red armor. Uchiha Madara didn't hide his sight, although it was a little far away. Everyone could clearly feel that Uchiha Madara was looking at Senju Takuma at this moment. Sure enough, although Uchiha Obito was defeated, the one who can really threaten the entire ninja world is still you, Madara. Senju Takuma's eyes stared at Uchiha Madara, and there was not only anger in his eyes, but also deep sadness. After all, Uchiha Madara was a close friend who once established the Woodleaf village with Senju Takuma. Now, watching his former close friend directly betray the entire ninja world, and stubbornly want to summon the Jubi again to make himself invincible, and use the infinite Tsukuyomi to drag the entire ninja world into the world of Genjutsu. Such a crazy behavior naturally filled Senju Takuma's heart with deep sadness and anger, but Senju Takuma was actually very clear. With his body simulated by the Edo Tensei, it was impossible for him to win against Uchiha Madara, who became stronger after getting his own cells. However, all his previous experiences with Uchiha Madara made him very likely to become the first target of Uchiha Madara's attack, so Senju Takuma almost instantly decided to make himself the bait to attract Uchiha Madara, so that others would have a chance to defeat Uchiha Madara directly. As Senju Takuma's younger brother, Tobirama was naturally the first to understand what his big brother's plan was. Although his big brother sometimes looked sloppy, as long as he decided something, there was no possibility of changing it. Madara, I know you want to defeat me, so come on. I, Senju Takuma, will stand here waiting for you. Senju Takuma took a few steps forward, walked out of the crowd, and stood in front of everyone. As the god of shinobi, his spirit was directly revealed at this moment. Sure enough, this is the spirit of a person who ended the chaos of the shinobi world war. Seeing Senju Takuma coming out, Uchiha Madara's eyes flashed with a trace of fanaticism. Senju Takuma's plan can be said to be clear to Uchiha Madara, but now that he has the power beyond his peak, he didn't have the slightest fear of Senju Takuma standing opposite him. Since you want to fight, then I will naturally not hesitate to fight with you. Before Uchiha Madara's voice fell, his body had already moved, and his body burst out with a powerful speed, rushing directly in the direction of the strong people and the nine-tailed beasts. Chapter 680. Seeing Uchiha Madara rushing over, Senju Takuma also directly entered Sage Mode. The cinnabar-colored facial lines directly covered Senju Takuma's cheeks. His hands quickly formed a seal, and a ninjutsu was almost completed in an instant. Sage Mode, Wood Release, Wood Dragon Technique. The chakra in Senju Takuma's body surged, and the ground suddenly cracked, and a wood dragon rushed out directly from the soil. But the emergence of the wood dragon was not the end, it was just the beginning. One after another, wooden dragons rushed out of the soil and circled around in the sky. The number of wood dragons gradually accumulated to 9, and 9 wood dragons hovered around Senju Takuma. 9 dragons chaotic rush. Under the control of Senju Takuma, the 9 wood dragons rushed directly toward Uchiha Madara. Obviously, 9 huge wood dragons rushed directly toward him, but Uchiha Madara didn't stop rushing forward at all. He opened his hands, and chakra was constantly condensed in his hands, and the powerful force in his Rinnegan surged directly. As Uchiha Madara and the 9 wood dragons continued to approach, the powerful force condensed in Uchiha Madara's hands was directly released. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force directly rushed out from Uchiha Madara's palms, and the 9 wood dragons rushed forward directly stopped. The wood dragons and the repulsive force seemed to have formed a strange balance at this moment. Uchiha Madara saw that the wood dragons and the repulsive force only maintained the balance, and his heart seemed to be a little unhappy. He increased his chakra output, and the power of Shinra Tensei was strengthened again, and the 9 wood dragons were directly bounced back. Looking at the 9 wood dragons being directly repelled, Uchiha Madara's Gedo power continued to condense in his hands, and 2 iron rods directly appeared in Uchiha Madara's hands. Fire Release, Flame Bullet. Water Release, Heaven's Tears. Earth Release, Earth Dragon Bullet. One by one, ninjutsu was cast by several ninjas who were good at ninjutsu. Although these ninjutsu had extraordinary power, in the face of the powerful Uchiha Madara, it was actually no different from an itch. Although these ninjutsu couldn't cause enough effect, it also made Uchiha Madara very annoyed. Eyebrows slightly wrinkled together, Uchiha Madara once again, but this time he didn't cast the Shinra Tensei, but used the power of the Path Seal. Any ninjutsu and chakra were useless in front of Jutsu Sei's power. The overwhelming ninjutsu were directly absorbed by Uchiha Madara's body, and the powerful chakra directly gathered in Uchiha Madara's body. Madara opened his mouth, and a blue chakra directly rushed out of Uchiha Madara's mouth. At this moment, Uchiha Madara didn't even cast any ninjutsu, he just directly rushed in the direction of the crowd with the purest chakra. Perhaps the chakra itself wasn't very lethal, but in such a chakra impact ray, it contained the power of the yin-yang release, and to a certain extent, it was quite similar to the Bijadama cast by the Bijadama. Uchiha Madara imitated the Bijadama's impact ray directly shot into the place where many strong people gathered. Although this impact ray looked quite simple, the dangerous aura contained in it could be clearly felt by everyone. The defensive line gathered by many strong people was directly broken. Although the 9-tailed beasts themselves were powerful, their bodies were too big, and Uchiha Madara's body was too small and flexible. In order to preserve the power in their body, the 9-tailed beasts chose to temporarily avoid the sharp edge out of practical considerations and also out of fear of the Rinnegan. Uchiha Madara must be controlled first, otherwise, no one will have a chance to attack. Immortal Method, Would Release, Bright God Gate. Senju Takuma's hand quickly printed, and once again cast a ninjutsu to try to control Uchiha Madara. 1 horizontal and 2 vertical red logs directly formed a huge torii, and with the continuous output of Senju Takuma's chakra, more and more Tori were condensed. Under the control of Senju Takuma, the red Tori rushed in the direction of Uchiha Madara one after another. The first few were easily avoided by Uchiha Madara, but after dodging a few times, he didn't know whether it was because of the decrease of physical strength or the increase of the number of Tori rushing toward him, but Uchiha Madara was directly suppressed under the red Tori and directly controlled. Because the red Tori was full of wood release, chakra, even if Uchiha Madara has the Rinnegan, he doesn't dare to absorb this kind of chakra casually. The powerful suppression ability of the immortal method, wood release, Bright God Gate directly suppressed Uchiha Madara and made it difficult for him to move. It's so smooth. Uchiha Madara knows Senju Takuma very well, and Senju Takuma also knows Uchiha Madara very well. Although Senju Takuma believes that as long as his immortal method, would release, Bright God Gate can suppress Uchiha Madara, he will be able to control Uchiha Madara. But all of this is a bit too smooth, and Senju Takuma can't help but have some doubts in his heart. As a ninja, after seeing that Uchiha Madara was suppressed, Senju Takuma didn't immediately go forward to check his results or kill Uchiha Madara. Seeing that Senju Takuma didn't take the bait for a long time, Uchiha Madara's eyes flashed with a trace of dissatisfaction, and he directly stabbed the 2 iron rods in his hand into the immortal method, would release, Bright God Gate. Uchiha Madara's body has cells that belong to Senju Takuma, so Uchiha Madara can naturally absorb the wood release, chakra. Uchiha Madara's eyes belong to the Rinnegan of the Sage of the Six Paths, so it is naturally very easy for him to absorb the energy of chakra. Through the black iron rods, Uchiha Madara easily absorbed the chakra in the immortal method, would release, Bright God Gate. When chakra is absorbed, a ninjutsu will naturally lose its original power. The red Tori directly lost its color because of chakra, and the round wood also directly decayed and withered. He easily stood up, and pieces of rotten wood fell to the ground. The immortal technique, would escape, divine light gate had been broken. Chapter 681. Uchiha Madara broke free from the shackles of the Sage Method, would release, Bright Spirit Gate, and rushed straight towards Senju Takuma with 2 black iron rods in his hands. Perhaps it was because the chakra absorbed from Senju Takuma's Sage Method, would release, Bright Spirit Gate, further activated the cells in Uchiha Madara's body that belonged to Senju Takuma. At this moment, Uchiha Madara's speed became even faster. Even with Senju Takuma's strength, he could only see a few afterimages appearing in front of him. In order to protect himself, Senju Takuma directly controlled the 9 wooden dragons that were repelled by Uchiha Madara just now. Using the advantage of the number of wooden dragons, he attacked in the direction that Uchiha Madara might go. But this time, Uchiha Madara seemed to have tasted the benefits of absorbing Senju Takuma's chakra. He directly threw out the black iron rod in his hand. Relying on his superb hidden weapon throwing skills and physical fitness, the iron rod directly hit the center of the wooden dragon's eyebrows while moving at high speed. The black iron rod was thrown out by Uchiha Madara, and the wooden dragons that were hit were almost emptied of the chakra in their bodies in the blink of an eye. They turned into pieces of rotten wood and fell directly to the ground. As a large amount of wood release, chakra entered his body through the connection between him and the black iron rod, Uchiha Madara's physical fitness was improved again. The distance between Uchiha Madara and Senju Takuma was getting closer and closer, and Uchiha Madara's speed was even faster because of the stimulation of the wood release, chakra that Senju Takuma used. At this moment, Senju Takuma also fell into an awkward situation. The most important reason why he was called the God of Shinobi was his powerful wood release ninjutsu. But from the current situation, his would release ninjutsu was not a threat to Uchiha Madara at all. It was even a kind of nourishment to a certain extent. It was precisely because of the absorption of his would release chakra that Uchiha Madara's physical fitness improved again and again. This made Senju Takuma not know whether he should continue to use his would release ninjutsu to hinder the enemy, or directly retreat and let Uchiha Madara get stronger. And this phenomenon also happened to other ninjas. For ninjas with long-range attacks, such as Jiraiya and Orochimaru, all their ninjutsu would be directly absorbed by Uchiha Madara using the power of the hungry ghost path of the six paths, and even return it back. And for close-range attacks, they would have to bear the risk of Uchiha Madara getting close to everyone. In the face of a powerful threat like Uchiha Madara, no matter who it is inevitable that there will be some hesitation in their heart, and at this moment, everyone's hesitation also gave Uchiha Madara the opportunity to attack. Almost in the blink of an eye, Uchiha Madara's figure had already appeared behind Senju Takuma, although Uchiha Madara's strength and his own body's burden made Senju Takuma unable to react in time. But Senju Takuma also noticed that someone was behind him, and immediately wanted to turn around and fight back, but obviously, Uchiha Madara's action was faster. He directly opened his hands towards Senju Takuma's body, and the power of Gedo in his hands continued to condense. Short black iron rods were shot directly from Uchiha Madara's hands towards Senju Takuma's body like a machine gun. These black iron rods were very short, and a large part of them directly sank into Senju Takuma's body. At this moment, Senju Takuma has a body simulated by the Edo Tensei, and there is no such thing as blood, nor any so-called vital points. However, the black iron rods were condensed from the power of Gedo. After entering Senju Takuma's body, they began to constantly disturb the flow of chakra in Senju Takuma's body, making it impossible for Senju Takuma to make the slightest movement. In Senju Takuma's body, whether it was the Senjutsu chakra or Mokuton chakra, they were constantly being transmitted from Senju Takuma's body to Uchiha Madara's body. As for whether Uchiha Madara could control the Senjutsu chakra that was transmitted to his body, Uchiha Madara's body, which did not have any strange reaction after absorbing the Senjutsu Mokuton, Bright God Gate, was enough to explain all this. After directly absorbing the Mokuton chakra and Senjutsu chakra from Senju Takuma's body into his own body, Uchiha Madara suddenly grabbed the broken red plate armor on his body with his hand, and with a little force, the red plate armor was directly torn off. At the part below Uchiha Madara's left shoulder, a person's face could be clearly seen. This person was none other than Senju Takuma, who was paralyzed on the ground with chakra disturbed by the black iron rods. The face of Senju Takuma on Uchiha Madara's shoulder was so vivid that if one looked at it for a long time, one would even involuntarily have the feeling of this person will rush out at any time. And perhaps because of the absorption of the Senjutsu chakra from Senju Takuma's body, the face of Senju Takuma on Uchiha Madara's shoulder was also painted with the face lines that appeared when Senju Takuma used Sage Mode. But different from the cinnabar face lines of Senju Takuma, the face of Senju Takuma on Uchiha Madara's shoulder was dark blue at the moment. The dark blue color gave people a strange feeling of looking directly at the thick darkness in the depths of the ocean. Hashirama, you are still not as good as me. Not as good as me. Uchiha Madara looked at Senju Takuma, who was completely unable to move and was very weak in front of him, and the corner of his mouth was slightly opened, and he roared arrogantly to the sky. Slowly turning his body, Uchiha Madara looked at the nine-tailed beasts that were scattered because of his attack just now, and slowly said, Hashirama, I helped you to create the peaceful world in your mind. But the facts tell us that this way simply won't work. Now, I'll let you see how I'm going to keep the eternal peace in the shinobi world. Leave your useless peace to me and let me remake it. All of this, we'll start with this. With that, Uchiha Madara's figure suddenly moved, and looking at the direction of Uchiha Madara's rapid approach, it was obviously the direction of Ichibi Shikaku. Chapter 682. Obviously, compared to the huge body of the Bijou, Uchiha Madara's figure was as small as an ant, but when he saw Uchiha Madara rushing towards him, Ichibi Shikaku's heart was filled with panic. As a creature condensed by chakra, the Bijou's perception of chakra is naturally very clear. Just now, Uchiha Madara defeated Senju Takuma, not to mention other things, the amount of chakra in his body has already exceeded the amount of chakra in the body of a Bijou, but such an existence was still defeated so easily. If it was him, how many rounds can he go against Uchiha Madara? Mobilizing the Mokuton chakra and Senjutsu chakra in his body, Uchiha Madara's hands also began to form hand seals. Senjutsu, Mokuton, Bright God Gate. Ninjutsu was quickly cast from the hands of Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara didn't use the fire release ninjutsu that he has always been good at. Instead, with the help of the large amount of senjutsu that he absorbed from Senju Takuma's body, Chakra directly used Mokuton ninjutsu. After all, Mokuton ninjutsu is simply the nemesis of Bijou, and it has a unique advantage in suppressing chakra against large enemies. 5 torii made of red logs directly appeared in the sky above Ichibi Shikaku. At this moment, Uchiha Madara was still a certain distance away from Ichibi Shikaku. Ichibi Shikaku originally thought that Uchiha Madara would have close combat with him, but he didn't expect Uchiha Madara to directly cast such a ninjutsu. Caught off guard, Ichibi Shikaku was directly pressed under the 5 huge torii. As if to ensure that Ichibi Shikaku couldn't escape from his shackles, Uchiha Madara also used the power of Rinnegan in his eyes, and directly summoned the Gedo chain released by the Gedo Mazo when it absorbed the Bijou. Together with Senjutsu, would release, Bright God Gate, it directly bound Ichibi Shikaku. After dealing with Ichibi Shikaku, Uchiha Madara directly turned his eyes to the other Bijou. After seeing that Ichibi Shikaku was directly controlled, these Bijou also reacted. Although they were forced back by Uchiha Madara's chakra attack, but at this moment, they no longer worried about preserving their strength, and directly turned their various powers into ninjutsu and directly cast them in the direction of Uchiha Madara. Nibi Nikomata's blue-black flame, Sanbai Isabu's water release, Yanbi Sun Wukong's lava release, Gobi Mu Wang's boiling release, Six-tailed Rhino's acid release, and Seven-tailed Halcyon's phosphorus powder rushed in the direction of Uchiha Madara. But at this moment, Uchiha Madara obviously has more powerful strength. Activating the power of Rinnegan, Uchiha Madara directly used the suction seal of the Hungry Ghost Path to directly convert the various achievements of the 6 Bijou into the purest chakra and stored it in his body, and then released the special ability of his Rinnegan, Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. The clone summoned by Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison, has the same power as Uchiha Madara, and each shadow is hidden in a different space. Even the Bijou has no way to cause substantial damage to these shadows. The powerful shadow directly attacked the 6 Bijou under the command of Uchiha Madara. Almost in an instant, the 6 Bijou were directly squeezed to the ground by Uchiha Madara. Before they could fully exert their strength, they were directly suppressed by Uchiha Madara's immortal method, would release, Bright Spirit Gate, combined with the chains of the Gedo Mazo. Seeing that he has controlled 7 Bijou, Uchiha Madara directly began to make hand seals with his hands without thinking. Through the power of his Rinnegan, he got in touch with the body of the Jubi inside Uchiha Obito. In an instant, Uchiha Madara pressed his hands on the ground, summoning technique, Gedo Mazo. Sensing the call of Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan, the Gedo Mazo was directly pulled out of Uchiha Obito's body and slowly emerged from under Madara's feet. Because of the loss of all the Bijou, the Gedo Mazo at this moment has returned to its most primitive state. Uchiha Madara stood on the shoulder of the Gedo Mazo, controlling the Gedo Mazo to directly reabsorb the 7 Bijou that he has subdued into his body. At this moment, the battlefield seems to have returned to the time when they faced Uchiha Obito in the 6 Paths mode. However, because Orochimaru and Tsunade went somewhere, and Senju Takuma was directly defeated by Uchiha Madara, the strength of the ninja allied forces has hardly increased. Looking at Uchiha Madara's posture at this moment, it is obvious that he is going to summon the Jubi again. Uchiha Madara, who has not become the Jubi column force, is already so difficult to deal with. Once Uchiha Madara really becomes the Jubi column force and obtains the power of the 6 Paths, coupled with Madara's original strength and a pair of complete Rinnegan, no one really knows how to fight against Uchiha Madara. While many ninjas were still hesitating, the Hachibi, as the only remaining Bijou, looked at the Kyubi with his eyes. At this moment, it is a moment of life and death for the Bijou, they must not sit still and wait for death. Kurama, no matter what, we are absolutely waiting for death now. The Hachibi's slightly rough voice sounded in the ears of the Nine Tails. Although the Hachibi didn't say it explicitly, the Nine Tails was very clear about the meaning of the Hachibi. Since ordinary attacks are useless, now the Hachibi and the Nine Tails can only try the Bijadama. Naruto, thank you for your help. Naruto and the Nine Tails are telepathically connected. Although the Nine Tails didn't say anything, Naruto still understood the meaning of the Nine Tails. A large number of chakra condensed in front of the Nine Tails' mouth, and a huge chakra sphere formed directly in the mouth of the Nine Tails. At this moment, the Nine Tails hasn't released the fusion between him and the Susanoo. Standing in the mouth of the Nine Tails, Sasuke and Naruto stretched out their palms at the same time, as if to add more power to the Bijadama that the Nine Tails was casting. Chapter 683. The Bijadama itself is actually a simple black sphere. It's a powerful and unique attack method of the Bijadama using a certain proportion of yin-yang chakra. When Naruto and Sasuke opened their hands and faced the Bijadama, the power of both of them was also added to the Bijadama. The golden chakra flame with a bit of green light first covered the Bijadama, then Naruto mixed the Nine Tails chakra and Senjutsu chakra to a certain extent, and then released it towards the Bijadama. The Bijadama, which was originally just a static black sphere, began to rotate at a high speed after Naruto injected chakra. With the continuous rotation, the shape of the Bijadama also began to slowly change. The golden chakra flame and Senjutsu chakra on the Bijadama slowly turned into a shape similar to the Rasenshuriken Jutsu that Naruto once used. At this moment, only a thin layer of golden chakra flame was left on the main body of the Bijadama, and more chakra flame directly turned into the blades around the shuriken. Just by looking at it, one can already feel the huge power contained in it. After the infusion of Naruto's chakra, Sasuke also used his Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan's Dojutsu Amaterasu and Katan, Kagutsuchi at the same time. The black flame directly burned on the Bijadama and turned into the sharpest blade of the entire Bijadama shuriken. Seeing that Nine Tails actually directly cast such a powerful ninjutsu under the joint blessing of Naruto and Sasuke, Hachibi also directly released the Bijadama that he had been brewing for a long time. Hachibi directly swallowed the black chakra ball into his abdomen, and after his body slightly bulged, a huge chakra ray directly rushed out of Hachibi's mouth. After all, the Hachibi's chakra is second only to the Kyuubi among the nine-tailed beasts, and the Bijadama displayed by him is naturally very powerful and has a very wide coverage range. Just one attack from him can cover almost half of the entire battlefield. Uchiha Madara himself has half of the ability of Chakra's seal of the Hungry Ghost Path. Even in the face of Hachibi's powerful Bijadama, Uchiha Madara directly rushed towards the huge energy beam formed by Bijadama. The seal of the seal ability was immediately cast. Although the attack power is extremely strong and the coverage is large, in the face of all the abilities of Chakra, even Bijadama can't cause too much damage. However, the Bijadama cast by Hachibi greatly hindered Uchiha Madara's vision. The shadow that was summoned by Uchiha Madara just now also returned to Uchiha Madara's body because of the time limit, and it will take some time to cast it again. Now, Naruto and Sasuke looked at each other, and the chakra in their hands surged more powerful, directly pushing out the Bijadama that was brewed in front of Nine Tails' mouth. After being blessed by Senjutsu chakra and Amaterasu, it was directly pushed out. Scorch release, Bijadama, light will blast, dark arrow zero style. The awkward name directly came out of Naruto's mouth. It was a unique ninjutsu in itself, but for some reason, Naruto directly said such an awkward name. Sasuke naturally didn't care about such details. Since Naruto was willing to name such a ninjutsu that he used together with himself, Sasuke naturally didn't have too many thoughts to refute. At this moment, Uchiha Sasuke's mind was more focused on the Bijadama, Futon, Rasen Shuriken, Senjutsu Chakra, Katan, Earth's Life, and Amaterasu's Flame. When he was young, Sasuke was very good at using Shuriken, kunai, and other hidden weapons. At this moment, the task of releasing the Scorch Release, Bijadama, Light Will Blast, Dark Arrow Zero style naturally fell on Sasuke. Sasuke relied on the Amaterasu flame attached to the Light Will Blast Pitch Black Zero arrow to control it with his dojutsu, Katan, Kagutsuchi. The Light Will Blast Pitch Black Zero arrow that was originally rampaging became strange. There were even several afterimages in the air that were hard to distinguish between real and fake. Hachibi's Bijadama was finally blocked by Uchiha Madara, but the Light Will Blast, Dark Arrow Zero style, which was jointly cast by Naruto and Sasuke, was very close to Uchiha Madara's body. At this moment, even if Uchiha Madara wanted to dodge, there was no possibility of Uchiha Madara's profession. However, there was a certain difference between the Senjutsu chakra attached to the Light Will Blast and the Senjutsu chakra that Uchiha Madara absorbed from Senju Takuma's body. If it wasn't for the fact that his body had Senju Takuma's cells, Uchiha Madara wouldn't dare to directly use the Seal Jutsu seal to absorb it directly. As for using the Jubi's body, Geto Mazo to block it? Forget it. In Uchiha Madara's heart, the Geto Mazo was far more important than his own body. After all, the Geto Mazo was an important tool that allowed him to possess the power of the sage. Senjutsu chakra would cause great damage to it, so Uchiha Madara didn't want to let the Geto Mazo take it head-on. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Uchiha Madara concentrated all the Seal Jutsu seal ability on his left arm and directly blocked in front of his body. With his Rinnegan, Uchiha Madara could still determine the landing point of the Light Will Blast. He directly blocked the ninjutsu that was attacking him with his left arm, trying to resist the joint attack of Naruto and Sasuke in this way. Obviously, Uchiha Madara relied on his experience and the power of Rinnegan to accurately determine the landing point of the attack. After blocking several shadows, the Light Will Blast directly fell on Uchiha Madara's body. Chakra, Senjutsu chakra, and Amaterasu flames erupted at the same time, and Uchiha Madara's body was directly covered in dazzling light. After a moment, a figure was directly blown out of the dazzling light. Uchiha Madara was directly blown away by the joint attack of Naruto and Sasuke. Chapter 684. When the strong light faded, the place where Uchiha Madara was standing was scorched black. If one looked carefully, it was not difficult to find that the scorched place was even slightly sunken by a few inches, and some places were even burning with black Amaterasu flames. Uchiha Madara, who was knocked away, stood up at this moment. Uchiha Madara's left arm, which was used to resist the attack, was directly cut off at the root, and the broken part was also burning with black Amaterasu flames. Uchiha Madara opened his right hand, and the Inyang release was directly displayed by Uchiha Madara in a strange way. Just a gentle touch on the wound, and the black Amaterasu flames on Uchiha Madara's wound directly disappeared without a trace. After Black Zetsu gave the Rinnegan to Uchiha Madara, he directly merged into the soil and disappeared without a trace. At this moment, after Uchiha Madara was seriously injured, Black Zetsu's figure once again appeared beside Madara. Black Zetsu's body covered the right half of Uchiha Madara's body, and his hand turned into a hand knife, directly cutting off the left arm of Uchiha Madara directly. Black Zetsu handed the arm directly to Uchiha Madara, and said to Uchiha Madara, "Madara-sama, please use this arm to make up for it." Uchiha Madara's body was greatly injured in the past, and more than half of his body and organs were filled with white Zetsu clones. Uchiha Madara's body had a large number of Senju Takuma cells, and it was not difficult to use a part of Senju Takuma clones to fill his body. Black Zetsu subtly injected a part of his body into his arm and raised it a little higher, directly in front of Madara's face. Uchiha Madara was very clear that the process of collecting the Hachibi and Nine Tails will be more difficult. If his body is broken, then there will be a great drop in combat power. It is not impossible to use white Zetsu clones to fill his body. Uchiha Madara directly received the arm directly on his wound. White Zetsu clones and Senju Takuma cells have the same root. At the moment of contact, pink granulation directly surged from the wound, and almost in an instant, the left arm of Uchiha Madara was directly connected to Uchiha Madara's body. Except for a slight difference in the skin color, there was not even a trace of a wound. Uchiha-sama. I will take my leave for the time being. After Black Zetsu blessed Uchiha Madara, he directly disappeared from everyone's sight. Seeing that Uchiha Madara directly healed all his wounds in such a way, everyone who stood opposite to Uchiha Madara was full of vigilance at this moment. It seems that if I want to collect the tailed beasts, I have to eliminate all these little bugs first, otherwise, there will be a lot of trouble. Uchiha Madara looked at everyone present, and finally decided to attack everyone except Column Force. 6 Paths, Jubi Seal. As if seeing the Gedo Mazo, Uchiha Madara directly used a powerful sealing technique to absorb the Jubi into his body, reducing the possibility of the Gedo Mazo being directly attacked. Unlike Uchiha Obito, Uchiha Madara used such a powerful sealing technique very quickly, as if he picked up an object and put it in his pocket, directly sealing the Gedo Mazo in his body. Although sealing such an incomplete Gedo Mazo in his body can't bring him the power of the sage, but it also provides Uchiha Madara with a lot of chakra. Will Grave, Border Prison. Uchiha Madara's unique Rinnegan Dojutsu was used again, and 4 undetectable Kage appeared on the battlefield again, and several Kage quickly found their targets: Tobirama, Yuan Fei, Uchiha Sasuke, and Nangongja. In fact, Uchiha Madara chose these people after some consideration. Tobirama, as the younger brother of Senju Takuma, although he didn't have the legendary Mokuton, his own achievements in water ninjutsu can be called the water god in the ninja world. Yuan Fei Hiruzen himself has the name Ninjutsu Professor. He has 5 kinds of chakra, and he is proficient in the nature and shape transformation of these 5 kinds of chakra. The power of a combination of ninjutsu is not inferior to any Kekkei Genkai, and it even exceeds it. Uchiha Sasuke himself is a member of the Uchiha clan, and his eyes have evolved to the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which is only 1 step away from the Rinnegan. In the fight against his Rinnegan, such a person with such a high-level dojutsu is naturally a great threat. As for Nangongja, to be honest, Nangongja is the only one among these people who he can't see through. After all, cultivators who use internal force have actually reached the end of the road during the period of Uchiha Madara's active period. In Uchiha Madara's impression, these people who practice internal force are just some special ninjas who use different kinds of energy to fight. But after fighting with Nangongja, Nangongja used sword chi and natural chakra, which Uchiha Madara has never seen before. This made Uchiha Madara's heart involuntarily look at Nangongja. As for the remaining Jiraiya and Gaara, to be honest, these 2 people are no different from trash in the eyes of Uchiha Madara. It's just a matter of time for him to deal with them. The Kage summoned by Luan Tomb, Border Prison, is obviously extremely powerful. Although Tobirama and Yuan Fei Hiruzen know that Uchiha Madara has such an undetectable attack, they don't have any particularly effective defense. And Uchiha Madara's own attack makes the general defense useless under such an attack, so Tobirama and Yuan Fei Hiruzen were directly hit by many black iron rods. The Black Iron Rod's special ability to block chakra was also instantly activated. If there is no accident, Tobirama and Yuan Fei Hiruzen will directly withdraw from the battle. Chapter 685. Compared to Uchiha Madara, Nangongja and Uchiha Sasuke, Senju Tobirama and Yuan Fei's Hiruzen were obviously much better. After casting Light Will Blast with Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke left Nine Tails' mouth. However, because Uchiha Sasuke directly poured a lot of his dojutsu into Susanoo before leaving, Nine Tails' body still maintained Susanoo's armor. Sasuke himself has Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Although it's still a bit inferior to Rinnegan, it's still at the pinnacle of dojutsu. With the dynamic vision of Sharingan combined with his keen observation after practicing swordsmanship, Uchiha Sasuke still observed the movements of the Kage summoned by Luan Tomb, border prison from some clues. Needless to say, Nangongzhi has reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship. When he was in Blood Cloak Pavilion, Nangongzhi once used Sword Domain, an ability that was close to a divine skill. Sword Domain itself is a skill to suppress the enemy's ability and improve one's own attack ability. In the beginning, whether it was against Uchiha Madara or Uchiha Obito, in fact, Nangongzhi used this skill. However, he didn't know why such a skill had little effect on these two enemies, so in order to preserve his strength, Nangongzhi shrank his sword domain to a range of 1 meter around his body. When Uchiha Madara used Luan Tomb, Border Prison, to summon Kage to attack Nangongzhi and Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi almost simultaneously unsheathed their long swords to deal with it. Before the battle with Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Sasuke's silver long sword was directly cut off by Uchiha Obito's Tenma spear, so Uchiha Sasuke could only condense his lightning attribute chakra to a certain extent to cast Raiton, Chidori, transformation, Raiton, Chidori sharp spear, to complete the missing part of the silver long sword. Nangongzhi also directly attached his sword chi and internal strength to his sword of calamity. The blue light and the black sword of calamity complemented each other, full of a sense of deterrence and mystery. Although Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi's movements were not so consistent, but when they waved their long swords in their hands, they were also full of confidence and elegance. Between the flashes of sword chi, several black iron rods that were thrown towards Nangongzhi and Uchiha Sasuke were directly shot down by the two of them. Although the black iron rods were shot down, Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi didn't relax at all. They were still full of vigilance and observed their surroundings. Suddenly, Nangongzhi directly slashed the sword of calamity in his hand, and a sword chi rushed out directly from the sword of calamity. The half-moon-shaped sword chi didn't attack other targets, but rushed towards a place not far from Sasuke. After slashing this sword chi, Nangongzhi didn't stop at all. He waved his long sword towards another place, and slashed out another sword chi. Although the two attacks seemed to have a sequence, in fact, Nangongzhi's attack only happened in a very short time. Nangongzhi's two sword chi directly hit the two Kages that were attacking Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi. The Kages were not injured at all when they were not attacking, but at this moment, the two Kages were in a state of attack. Naturally, they were injured by Nangongzhi's attack. At the moment of being injured, all the Kages cast by Uchiha Madara also returned to Uchiha Madara's body in an instant. The damage suffered by the Kages was also reflected on Uchiha Madara's body. Deep wounds appeared on Uchiha Madara's left leg and right arm, but Uchiha Madara began to recover quickly under the influence of Senju Takuma's cells. These two people are really difficult to deal with as I thought. Looking at the figures of Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi, Uchiha Madara's eyes became more and more serious. In fact, if Yuan Fei Hiruzen and Senju Tobarama could be completely resurrected, their performance would not be inferior to Uchiha Sasuke and Nangongzhi, but after all, both of their bodies were simulated by Edo Tensei Jutsu, so their control was naturally inferior. Sasuke, let's go together. Nangongzhi shouted at Sasuke, and the sword chi and internal strength in his body also surged quickly. After all, Nangongzhi didn't use chakra, and the seal technique brought by Gakido in Rinnegan was useless against Nangongzhi. When Sasuke heard Nangongzhi's voice, he immediately took action. He waved the silver sword in his hand, and the Raiton Chidori sharp spear, which was originally used to make up for the missing blade, scattered directly like scattered petals at this moment, and turned into a small thing that looked like 1,000 books and shot in the direction of Uchiha Madara. Lightning evasion, 1,000 birds and 1,000 books. In the face of Uchiha Madara's seal, Sasuke knew very well that even if he improved his ninjutsu power, there was no way to cause enough damage to Uchiha Madara. So when Uchiha Sasuke used Chidori, he didn't pursue attack power, instead, he pursued attack density. At this moment, the Chidori was quite overwhelming, and they were attacking Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara looked at Uchiha Sasuke's Chidori and naturally understood that Uchiha Sasuke wanted to cover his line of sight in this way, and then let Nangongja carry out a real lethal attack on him. Uchiha Madara was hit in the same way before. Naturally, he won't fall in the same place twice. Uchiha Madara opened his hands, and the power of Rinnegan gathered in his palms. After a moment, Uchiha Madara displayed the power of Tendo Shinra Tensei. Uchiha Sasuke's Chidori naturally couldn't stop the powerful repulsion, and they were directly bounced off one by one. All the attacks in front of Uchiha Madara were directly cleared under one blow, but a sense of crisis still rushed out from Uchiha Madara's heart. Chapter 686. Before Sasuke covered Uchiha Madara's line of sight, Nangongja, who seemed to have been staying in the same place, no one knew where he was at the moment, and the place where he was standing was empty. Uchiha Madara sensed a very obvious threat behind him and immediately turned around. Uchiha Madara saw Nangongja standing behind him with the sword in his hand. Nangongja waved the sword in his hand, and the sword energy directly shot out from the long sword in his hand, rushing in the direction of Uchiha Madara. The sword energy itself was translucent, and under the high-speed movement and Nangongja's control, it became difficult to predict its whereabouts. Uchiha Madara opened his hands again, trying to use Shinra Tensei to shoot down the sword energy that was attacking him, and a strong repulsive force broke out from his open hands. But in the face of the strong repulsive force, the sword energy released by Nangongja directly burst out with an extremely sharp breath. The sword energy directly cut through the powerful repulsive force, and the speed of the sword energy was almost unnoticeable as it attacked Uchiha Madara. But after all, the traces of the sword energy became very obvious when it cut through the repulsive force. Uchiha Madara quickly condensed two black iron rods in his hands, and directly dispersed the sword energy that was attacking him. Sure enough. I'm still a little bit weaker. Nangongja's strength was reflected in the combination of his taijutsu and sword energy attack, but because he wanted to attack from behind, he could only use sword energy to attack from a long distance, which led to the decline of Nangongja's attack power. After all, sword energy was still an illusory existence, and after being directly attacked by Uchiha Madara, it became fragile. Uchiha Madara also had a little lingering fear at this moment. After all, Uchiha Madara got a lot of wood-release chakra and senjutsu chakra from Senju Takuma. Uchiha Madara didn't think that these people standing opposite him could really threaten him. However, whether it was the combination of ninjutsu used by Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, or Nangongja's sword energy attack that he couldn't absorb, Uchiha Madara had to adjust his mentality again, and began to face these juniors with a more serious attitude. Uchiha Madara's eyes drifted from Nine Tails and Hachibi, and finally decided to choose a more conservative way, let Jubi resurrect completely first, and then deal with these juniors. Would release, would clone jutsu. Uchiha Madara quickly printed a seal, and a would release ninjutsu was directly cast by Uchiha Madara. After distributing chakra to the four clones, Uchiha Madara directly let the four clones rush directly to Nangongja's side and entangle Nangongja. Speeding up his movement speed, Uchiha Madara began to rush directly in the direction of Naruto and Killer Bee. But only a small distance forward, a figure directly blocked in front of Uchiha Madara. Taking a closer look, the person standing in front of him was his clansman, Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Madara looked at the junior of his clan who had Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan and said coldly, "You shouldn't have blocked my way, you should know in your heart that you can't stop me alone." Hearing Uchiha Madara's contemptuous words, Uchiha Sasuke's face was still cold. At this moment, Sasuke's heart was really without a trace of fear, even if the person he was facing now may be the strongest person in the ninja world today. Sasuke directly held the broken sword in his hand tighter, and then rushed directly towards Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara has the ability to seal, so all the attacks with chakra can't be used. Uchiha Sasuke also decided to directly rely on his taijutsu to fight against Uchiha Madara. Although Uchiha Sasuke's kenjutsu is very exquisite, and it can even be said that it has a feeling of opening a new school, Sasuke's enemy Uchiha Madara has a powerful strength that can directly ignore all skills. No matter how you change, I will break it with my own strength. Looking at Uchiha Sasuke's exquisite footwork and mysterious sword moves, Uchiha Madara just casually clenched his hand into a fist and directly rushed towards Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke can't use chakra to deal with Uchiha Madara, but Uchiha Madara can fully use his chakra. Senjutsu chakra was directly released by Uchiha Madara from his body, using a method similar to Senjutsu, Frog Gauntlet. Uchiha Madara's simple punch directly turned into a medium long-range attack. Uchiha Sasuke has not yet approached Uchiha Madara's body, and he was directly attacked by Uchiha Madara. The powerful force directly acted on Uchiha Sasuke's body, and part of Senjutsu chakra also directly invaded Uchiha Sasuke's body, making Uchiha Sasuke directly fall to the ground and unable to move. Uchiha Madara looked at Sasuke, who was directly knocked to the ground by himself, without the slightest ripple in his eyes, as if defeating an enemy like Uchiha Sasuke was nothing to be happy about for Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara slowly walked to Uchiha Sasuke's side and took Sasuke's broken sword directly in his hand. Without even aiming, he directly stabbed the sword into Sasuke's abdomen. A lot of blood directly gushed out from Uchiha Sasuke's abdomen, dyeing a large area of land red. Nangongja was now entangled by Uchiha Madara's four-wood clone jutsu, and there was no way to directly rescue Uchiha Sasuke. He could only watch with his eyes wide open as Uchiha Sasuke's blood kept flowing. After stabbing this sword, Uchiha Madara didn't care whether Uchiha Sasuke died immediately or not. Instead, he once again increased his speed and rushed towards the place where Naruto and Killer Bee were. Sasuke was lying on the ground, scarlet blood stained the white robe worn by Uchiha Sasuke. The scarlet and white set off each other, as if remembering the slow passing of life. But just as Sasuke fell to the ground, the soil suddenly cracked, and a huge python with only the thickness of a person's waist rushed out directly from the ground, then quickly swallowed Sasuke in its abdomen, and then escaped directly into the ground. Orochimaru, watching Sasuke being swallowed by a big snake, Nangongja's heart couldn't help but feel a little relieved. After all, Uchiha Sasuke could be said to be the strongest combat power in Blood Cloak Pavilion except for himself, and his relationship with him was also very good. He didn't want Sasuke to lose his life so easily. Chapter 687. Uchiha Madara's Wood Release. Wood Clone Jutsu is different from the Woodleaf Ninja Village's Shadow Clone Jutsu. The Wood Clone Jutsu created by Wood Clone Jutsu can withstand more damage than the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and it's not a simple consumable. With Uchiha Madara's complete combat experience and body that can withstand certain attacks, the four-wood clone jutsu directly restrained Nangongja in the same place, and there was no way for him to rescue Naruto and Killer Bee. Uchiha Madara naturally noticed that Uchiha Sasuke, who was just defeated by him, was rescued. However, although it was just a casual blow, he still directly instilled a lot of Rinnegan's Gedo power and Senjutsu chakra into Uchiha Sasuke's body. For people who can't suppress Senjutsu chakra is the most powerful poison, and Gedo power will also block the meridians of people without Rinnegan or higher level. Although it's similar to Nagato's method of blocking and destroying Jiraiya's meridians, this pair of Rinnegan belongs to Uchiha Madara. Naturally, it can exert its greatest power in the hands of Uchiha Madara. After absorbing Senju Takuma's Senjutsu chakra and Wood Release chakra, Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan has also improved to a certain extent. This time, the Gedo power injected into Uchiha Sasuke's body is much more powerful than the Gedo power that was originally blocked in Jiraiya's body. Even if Orochimaru can really find a way to solve it, it won't be so easy. Uchiha Madara used his far superior speed to rush in the direction of Naruto and Killer Bee, but halfway through, someone stopped in front of him. "All of you bugs. Can't you just do your job as a bug and wait for death to come? Jumping around in front of me is really noisy." The person standing in front of Uchiha Madara is none other than one of the Woodleaf Sannin, Toad Sage Jiraiya. Uchiha Madara used almost no special skills, and was too lazy to communicate with Jiraiya. He directly condensed a large number of Senjutsu chakra on his fist in the same way he just defeated Sasuke, and waved it forward. A huge fist print directly appeared in the air. The distorted air also outlined the shape of the fist print. The fist print was huge, 8 or 9 meters in size, and there was a powerful pressure that couldn't be ignored. Although Jiraiya was in sage mode at the moment, in the face of such an attack, his body couldn't facing such an attack. Even Madara's body couldn't facing such an attack. For such a person who wasn't a threat in his expectation, Uchiha Madara didn't even have the intention to kill him. The chakra in Jiraiya's body was still quite strong, so it's better to leave him alive and feed him to Jubi. Senjutsu, Wind Release, Ninefold Super Rasen Shuriken Technique. Uchiha Madara didn't intend to kill Jiraiya, but after all, Jiraiya just fell between Uchiha Madara and Naruto. Seeing Uchiha Madara walking over step by step, Naruto was naturally very worried that Uchiha Madara would kill Jiraiya. Naruto has been watching Jiraiya's fall these days, but Naruto was helpless like Watergate. When Naruto saw that Jiraiya regained his previous glory and came to the battlefield to participate in the battle, Naruto was very happy. However, the changes in the battlefield were far beyond Naruto's own expectations. Powerful enemies appeared one after another, and the battlefield became more and more dangerous. Even Jiraiya, who had the strength of a Kage, could lose his life at any time. With the relationship between Naruto and Jiraiya, Naruto could only not let Jiraiya lose his life, so Naruto directly controlled the Nine Tails to use Senjutsu Chakra and Nine Tails Chakra to condense 9 huge Rasen Shuriken. Naruto mixed Senjutsu Chakra in it to attract Uchiha Madara's attention and let Uchiha Madara understand that he can also threaten him. Although Naruto's attack seemed to be a bit unwise, it was also because Naruto wanted to save Jiraiya's life. It could be regarded as a sincere heart. Looking at his prey, Nine Tails Column Force, Naruto dared to attack him first. This made Uchiha Madara a little excited, but also a little angry. It was just a prey, but now he dared to directly resist him and may even cause harm to him. This feeling was like a hunter who caught a rabbit and held the rabbit in his hand, but the rabbit was restless and bit the hunter fiercely. This behavior really made Uchiha Madara's heart very angry. Looking at the 9 Rasen Shuriken projected towards him, Uchiha Madara directly stepped on the ground and directly jumped high. The power of Outer Tao condensed in his hands, and 2 black iron rods were held in Uchiha Madara's hands. Looking at the 9 Rasen Shuriken flying towards him, Uchiha Madara, who had Rinnegan, naturally quickly judged the flight trajectory of the 9 Rasen Shuriken. His body directly twisted in the air, and with a shake of his wrist, a huge force was directly transmitted from his arm to the black iron rods. The force was not so rough, but very clever. The place where the iron rods touched was the power node of the entire Rasen Shuriken. The power of Outer Tao in the black iron rods was the nemesis of chakra to a certain extent. The 2 black iron rods directly attacked the power node of the Rasen Shuriken, directly making the 2 Rasen Shuriken dissipate in the air. After the 2 huge Rasen Shuriken were destroyed, the next few Rasen Shuriken also quickly approached the place where Uchiha Madara was. There was no doubt about the power of the Rasen Shuriken, but in the face of it, Uchiha Madara didn't seem to be nervous at all. Instead, as if he was playing a game, he directly kicked the Rasen Shuriken away, or directly twisted his body to dodge, or directly used the black iron rods to directly break the Rasen Shuriken. At this moment, Uchiha Madara was quite unstoppable. Chapter 688. Staring at Uchiha Madara, who was getting closer and closer to them, Naruto and Nine Tails were also full of pressure. Not only Nine Tails and Naruto, but Hachibi was also staring at Uchiha Madara with his huge eyes. After all, Uchiha Madara's current purpose was to capture him and Nine Tails directly and put them back into the Gedo Mazo. Just before, when Naruto and Sasuke worked together to rescue the 7 Bijou sealed in the Gedo Mazo, the Bijou were also constantly communicating with each other in a subtle way. From the mouth of the Bijou who was captured once, Nine Tails and Hachibi have also learned that the Gedo Mazo does have the ability to directly erase the Bijou's will and reassemble the Bijou to form the source of the Bijou, the Jubi sacred tree. So at this moment, Nine Tails and Hachibi have decided that even if they do everything, they must not be sealed in the Gedo Mazo. Naruto boy. Although I'm sorry, there is one thing I want you to promise me. The seal between you and me is very strong, and it almost makes our lives intertwined. In the case of the seal, if you die, I will die with you. So if we really can't stop Uchiha Madara, how about you die with me? For the first time, Kurama began to talk to Naruto in a negotiating tone. Bijou is actually an immortal existence to a certain extent. Even if they accidentally die after a certain period of time, they can still be resurrected with the help of the endless chakra in the shinobi world. Therefore, the so-called die together mentioned by Nine Tails may only be Naruto, and this method is actually not suitable for Killer Bee and Hachibi. After all, the seal used by Cloud Village to seal Hachibi is still somewhat inferior to the seal used by Uzumaki clan and would leave Shinobi Village to seal Hachibi in AI Naruto's body. Such a method can only be used by Naruto and Nine Tails. Kurama, since you've already said so much, what else can I say? Originally, as column force, once you are taken out of my body, I will die. If everything is really not up to par, then it's just a matter of time before I die. If my death can really make Uchiha Madara's plan to threaten the entire shinobi world fail, I will not hesitate to die, after all. Naruto said, and his eyes began to look around at the broken things around him. The traces left behind by various ninjutsu, the dead ninjas and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the people who had all their chakra sucked out and turned into dry corpses, and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion and the shinobi world who were forced to survive in a corner, Naruto's eyes were full of grief. After all, this shinobi world has suffered too much. If my death can end everything, then I will die. Hearing Naruto's words, Nine Tails' mouth also opened. It seems that he is thinking too much. Although Naruto's mentality has changed a lot in this war, Naruto is still Naruto after all. Naruto is the same as his father, a person who is more selfish than public. Well, we don't need to be so pessimistic now. Everything is not the end, we still have hope of winning. After all, in the previous several confrontations, it has been completely clear that chakra can cause damage to Uchiha Madara. Although I don't know where you learned the application of chakra and entered Sage mode, but now is not the time to care about such details. Naruto boy, now let's fight to our heart's content. Nine Tails' words also rushed into Naruto's mind, and for Nine Tails' words, Naruto's heart was also surging with blood. Although he was prepared to die, Naruto also didn't want to directly kill himself without the slightest resistance. When he could face death directly, just a little pressure from Uchiha Madara's body made Naruto have no scruples. Nine Tails' body condensed with golden chakra flames dissipated in an instant. After all, in the face of a powerhouse like Uchiha Madara, not only will his large body not bring any benefits, but it will also put him at a disadvantage. After entering Sage Fox mode, Naruto's golden trench coat and the black lines on his body also changed slightly, but overall, the difference wasn't very big. Nine Tails' chakra and chakra quickly condensed in Naruto's hand, and a milky white light blade appeared in Naruto's hand. The sticky white color looked very dazzling. Naruto held the light blade and rushed directly in the direction of Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara was very angry that Naruto dared to resist him. Now seeing Naruto rushing directly towards him, Uchiha Madara was so angry that the corners of his mouth curved into a smile. A frog in the well who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Looking at Naruto's figure, Uchiha Madara's anger became more and more intense. But at the same time, Uchiha Madara didn't let the anger in his heart get to his head. After all, Uchiha Madara keenly sensed a large number of senjutsu chakra in the light blade in Naruto's hand. Compared with Jiraiya's inferior chakra application, Naruto's senjutsu fox mode was still a great threat. And behind Naruto, who was rushing towards him, there was an eight-tailed ox demon that still maintained its huge body. Without thinking, Madara knew that the eight-tailed ox demon and Naruto would cooperate with each other in the battle later. Such a troublesome situation was naturally different from Uchiha Madara's expectation of a quick battle. Uchiha Madara was also thinking about how to quickly deal with the eight-tailed column force and the nine-tailed column force, the two important missing links in his plan. But now, the most important thing for Madara was to directly defeat this arrogant kid who was rushing towards him and let him know that he was not the weak chicken he had encountered before. Uchiha Madara held the two black iron rods tightly in his hands. Uchiha Madara increased his release of Outer Tao's power, and the black iron rods also constantly changed shape. For a while, they turned into a strange shape similar to a long sword. Chapter 689. The milky white long sword and the black double sword collided directly. Naruto and Uchiha Madara are not very good at swordsmanship, but because of their strong physical fitness, Uchiha Madara and Naruto can keenly perceive the flaws in each other's moves and directly attack the other with their own weapons. However, Naruto has an advantage over Uchiha Madara. That is, when Naruto was a child, he spent a long time with Nangongja, who can almost be called the #1 swordsman in the ninja world. When Nangongja taught Uchiha Sasuke swordsmanship, Naruto also watched a lot. However, due to the defect of his talent, Naruto really has no development prospects on the road of swordsmanship. Compared to the strange swordsmanship, Naruto is more suitable for those straightforward and powerful attacks, but after all, from Naruto Komatsu, he was exposed to these peak swordsmanship. At that time, Naruto may not fully understand these moves, but in the continuous battle with Uchiha Madara, in order to continue to fight Uchiha Madara, Naruto also reopened all the memories about swordsmanship hidden in the depths of his memory. Uchiha Madara is also very keenly aware that Naruto's swordsmanship is getting more and more subtle, and compared to the beginning, he can only passively wait for the flaws in his moves. He can now guide himself to make the flaws in his moves through his own swordsmanship. And after creating a loophole, Naruto didn't immediately chase after him. Instead, he let Hachibi attack him from behind without retracting his huge body. Hachibi itself is a tailed beast with an extremely fast recovery speed. Even if he received some counterattacks from Uchiha Madara when chasing Uchiha Madara, he can quickly recover. At this moment, Naruto and Hachibi are like a team fighting a boss, cooperating seamlessly to attack Uchiha Madara. Gradually, facing the cooperation of Naruto and Hachibi, Uchiha Madara himself became more and more irritated. After all, Uchiha Madara wants a quick battle instead of such an endless fight. Slightly frowning, Madara released the power of his Rinnegan in an instant. The gravity and repulsion of the heavenly way were attached to the two swords in Madara's hands, one on the left and one on the right. One on the left and one on the right, attracted and repelled. Uchiha Madara took the lead to attack Naruto with the long sword in his left hand. When Naruto saw Uchiha Madara's attack, he naturally used the milky white long sword in his hand to block Uchiha Madara's attack. After all, the black swords in the hands of Uchiha Madara are condensed by the power of Outer Tao. Once hit, it will be a big trouble for anyone. But the moment the long sword in his hand touched Uchiha Madara's long sword, Naruto instinctively felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, when the long sword in his hand touched the black long sword, it was as if it touched a strong glue and couldn't move. His weapon can't move freely. Such a situation naturally made Naruto panic. He tried to increase the strength in his hand to regain control of his long sword. Uchiha Madara suddenly moved in the direction of Naruto's strength, and Naruto's body immediately lost its balance at this moment and began to fall back. Seeing that Naruto's body lost its balance, Uchiha Madara immediately chased after him. The long sword in his right hand was full of repulsive force and immediately cut towards Naruto's body. Naruto was in the immortal fox mode at this moment, and the chakra raiment on his body can form chakra palms to attack. Naruto also reacted at this moment, and 2 chakra palms instantly condensed on his abdomen and back. The chakra palms on his back immediately opened on the ground, so that Naruto could stabilize his body and find a point of support. The chakra palms on his abdomen directly grabbed Uchiha Madara's black long sword. The black long sword with repulsive force is naturally different from an ordinary long sword. When the chakra palms condensed by Naruto grabbed the black long sword, a repulsive force was attached to the long sword in Uchiha Madara's right hand like an imperceptible sharp blade. The chakra palms used by Naruto were directly cut off, almost without the slightest resistance. The chakra palms were directly cut off, and the 9 tails chakra robe on Naruto's body was also directly cut off without the slightest resistance. The black long sword directly cut into Naruto's abdomen. As mentioned before, when the black long sword came into contact with Naruto's flesh, the power of the outer path and the sage jutsu chakra in the black long sword directly invaded Naruto's body. Although they are both called sage jutsu chakra, the sage jutsu chakra that Naruto cultivated through Mount Myaboku and the sage jutsu chakra that Uchiha Madara extracted from Senju Takuma's body were somewhat different. The invasion of the heterogeneous chakra directly caused the sage jutsu chakra in Naruto's body to begin to show signs of going berserk. Naruto's body began to show obvious toad-like characteristics, and his body began to become uncontrollable. When the outer path power invaded Naruto's body, it began to directly block Naruto's tendons and veins. It directly made Naruto completely unable to move. Throwing away the 2 black long swords in his hands, Uchiha Madara began to quickly condense black iron rods in his hands. He quickly condensed chakra iron rods and directly inserted them into the joints of Naruto's body to restrict Naruto's movement. Uchiha Madara directly ignored Naruto and rushed in the direction of Hachibi. Naruto boy! Naruto boy! 9 tails in Naruto's body shouted loudly, as if hoping that his voice could encourage Naruto to work harder to regain control of his body, and then directly commit suicide as previously discussed, so that Uchiha Madara would not be able to complete his plan. However, at this moment, Naruto's consciousness was completely in chaos, and there was no way to control his body that had already gone out of control. Only 9 tails was left in Naruto's body, anxious but helpless. Everything seemed to be a foregone conclusion. Chapter 690. At this moment, the Senjutsu chakra in Naruto's body directly went berserk, but Naruto didn't notice it at all, because at this moment, Naruto's consciousness has arrived in a strange space. The white material turned into the earth, and the gray material became the sky. This is a space that seems to have lost its color. In this space, except for Naruto, there are only 2 figures that seem to exist. One of them had pale white hair and a wrinkled face. 2 sharp horns protruded from his forehead. He wore a long white robe with strange patterns formed by Magatama. This person was sitting cross-legged in mid-air, with a black ring-shaped staff on his knees, just like the ring-shaped staff that Uchiha Obito held in his hand when he entered the 6 Paths mode. And in front of this person, there is also a person with black hair and a white robe with some blood stains. This person is very familiar to Naruto, it's his friend, Uchiha Sasuke. Azura. It's been a long time, my child. After seeing the person with white hair, Naruto's heart told him that this person is the ancestor of Shinobi world, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, and the so-called Azura in the mouth of Hagoromo Otsutsuki is himself. This kind of feeling is inexplicable, but it makes Naruto's heart full of confidence. However, Naruto still has a little vigilance in his heart. He was just fighting with Uchiha Madara, and now he is in such a strange place. This situation makes Naruto very puzzled. Perhaps out of his heart's hope to find someone he believes in, Naruto slowly walked to Sasuke's side and said to him, "Sasuke, what kind of place is this?" Seeing that Naruto didn't talk to him first, but talked to Sasuke first, Hagoromo Otsutsuki's eyes didn't show any anger. Instead, he became very relieved. After looking at Naruto standing beside him, Sasuke said to Naruto with a somewhat respectful tone, "Naruto, I know you have a lot of doubts in your heart now. When I first came here, I was also very confused. But all of this will be answered by Hagoromo Otsutsuki. You don't have to maintain useless vigilance. In this world, Hagoromo Otsutsuki will never harm the two of us. Will never harm the two of us?" After hearing Sasuke's words, Naruto's heart was full of doubts, but Sasuke's words undoubtedly told him that the person in front of him is indeed the ancestor of Shinobi world, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Could all of this have something to do with the strange name, Asura, that the immortal of six paths had given him? Asura and Indra, how long has it been? In the infinite reincarnation, the two of you fought and killed each other, but in this life, the two of you can directly work together to fight together. This scene has appeared countless times in my dreams, but when all of this happened in front of me, it still makes my heart full of joy. Listening to Hagoromo Otsutsuki's words, Naruto has been very keen to understand that the Asura in Hagoromo Otsutsuki's mouth refers to himself, and the so-called Indra refers to Sasuke standing beside him. Naruto bowed to Hagoromo Otsutsuki very respectfully, and then said to Hagoromo Otsutsuki, "Dear Hagoromo Otsutsuki, I don't understand who you mean by Asura and Indra, but it's definitely not me and Sasuke. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and my partner's name is Uchiha Sasuke. We are who we are, and we will only be who we are." Listening to Naruto's words, Hagoromo Otsutsuki's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he said to Naruto, "So, it's true that I'm wrong." With a bit of nostalgia, Hagoromo Otsutsuki's eyes swept over Naruto and Sasuke. "I used to have two children, and I believe you have already guessed their names. Their names are Otsutsuki Indra and Otsutsuki Asura. In the past, a lot of things happened, and if I explain them one by one, I don't think you want to listen. Anyway, in the end, my two children died because of the conflict of ideas between each other, but their death wasn't a real death. They left their chakra as a seed in the ninja world, and almost in every era, their chakra will be attached to two people, making these two people fated to be enemies, and the battle between them will never end. But in this life, you must also know that the chakra of the two of them is attached to the two of you. But you two are not affected by my two sons' chakra at all, and you two can sincerely cooperate to fight against the enemies of the ninja world." This made me very happy, and it also made me determined to let my remnant soul appear in front of you at all costs, and give you the power to defeat powerful enemies. After all of this is related to the Jubi. Sasuke has already investigated the relationship between Hagoromo Otsutsuki and the Jubi from some ancient books of Nangongja, so when he heard Hagoromo Otsutsuki's words, he didn't have any doubts. Although Naruto was confused at the moment, since Sasuke seemed to trust what Hagoromo Otsutsuki said, Naruto naturally chose to believe Sasuke. Seeing Naruto and Sasuke directly step forward in front of him, Hagoromo Otsutsuki's heart was filled with an unspeakable emotion, and directly injected the remaining power of six paths into Naruto and Sasuke's body, and then said to Naruto and Sasuke, "I can't directly give you powerful strength, but I can send you a seed that can take root and germinate. When certain conditions are met, the seed in your body will grow quickly, providing you with powerful strength to help you defeat all powerful enemies in front of you." In the interior of their souls that Naruto and Sasuke couldn't see, a great sun and a bright moon appeared in the depths of their souls. In their souls and bodies, weak but powerful chakra constantly appeared and gathered toward the great sun and bright moon in their souls. Chapter 691. At this moment, on the battlefield, Uchiha Madara has completely controlled the Nine Tails and the Hachibi. Whether it was Naruto or Killer Bee, both of them were nailed directly to their joints by several black iron rods and fell directly to the ground. For some reason, the Senjutsu chakra on Naruto's body has stopped, but the toad-like characteristics of his body still remained. Looking at Naruto and Killer Bee, who have been completely controlled by him, Uchiha Madara's face finally showed a somewhat gratified smile. Only one step. Only one step, and he can realize his plan and bring true peace to the ninja world, proving that what he has been doing is right. Uchiha Madara's hand began to print quickly, and suddenly, many thick iron chains rushed out of Uchiha Madara's abdomen. These iron chains are the Geto chains used by the Geto Mazo to seal the tailed beasts. Under the guidance of Uchiha Madara, the Geto chains flew in the direction of Naruto and Killer Bee as if they have their own consciousness. The moment the Geto chains touched the bodies of Naruto and Killer Bee, they directly integrated into their bodies, and directly entered the seal that sealed the Hachibi and the Nine Tails. Although the tailed beasts are very powerful, they are also suppressed by the Jubi. Facing the Geto chains, although the Hachibi and the Nine Tails are trying their best to struggle, their struggles have little effect. Nangongja looked at Uchiha Madara, who was extracting the power of the Hachibi and the Nine Tails, and he was very anxious. After all, the power displayed by Uchiha Obito in the Six Paths mode was too strong. If it wasn't for Naruto and Sasuke's sudden burst of power and Obito's focus on the Jubi God tree spreading in the battlefield, it wouldn't be so easy to deal with Uchiha Obito. Now, Uchiha Madara has a stronger physique and more perseverance than the previous Uchiha Obito. His eyes are the same as the Six Paths Sennin's Rinnegan. Before he obtained the Jubi and became the Jubi Column Force, he was already powerful. Once Uchiha Madara becomes the Jubi Column Force and obtains the power of the Six Paths Sennins, who in this world can stop Uchiha Madara? Six Paths Sennin's resurrection to fight against Uchiha Madara? Don't be kidding. Nangongja looked at the four wood clones of Uchiha Madara who were still fighting with him. At this moment, the four wood clones were covered with scars, and the chakra that was distributed by Uchiha Madara in their bodies was constantly consumed in the battle with Nangongja. Now, the four wood clones are on the verge of collapse. Must stop Uchiha Madara. Ha! Nangongja's sword chi and internal strength surged into the Sword of Calamity in his hand. The dark Sword of Calamity bloomed with brilliant light at this moment. Sensing the response of the Sword of Calamity in his hand, Nangongja directly raised the Sword of Calamity in his hand, ignoring the four wood clones that were attacking him. Gather! A short word burst out from Nangongja's mouth like a god's edict, and it reverberated through the entire battlefield like a clap of thunder. The sword chi continued to flow from the Sword of Calamity and Nangongja's body. The sword chi was very small, almost the size of an ordinary silver needle, but these sword chi were particularly dense. The sword chi surged around Nangongja, and the dense sword chi almost completely covered Nangongja. The four wood clones that were attacking Nangongja could not stop at this moment, and directly crashed into the barrier formed by Nangongja's sword chi. The sharp sword energy continued to mince the bodies of the four wood clones. The minced parts lost their luster almost instantly and turned into wood. Then, in the blink of an eye, they turned into pieces of wood dregs. Gather! Nangongja roared again, and the countless sword chi that lingered around him slowly condensed into the Sword of Calamity in Nangongja's hand. Originally, each sword chi was actually emitting a faint blue light, but when the countless sword chi gathered together, the blue light became particularly dense. Sky Sword. That's right, countless sword chi continued to condense. At this moment, the move Nangongja used was the Sky Sword that he had used before. Unlike the huge Sky Sword that he used to fight against large enemies, the Sky Sword that Nangongja used now was obviously much smaller in size. However, the reduction in size did not mean that the power of the Sky Sword had decreased. In fact, compared to the huge Sky Sword from before, the Sky Sword that Nangongja used now was more in line with his concept of the Sky Sword. At this moment, the sky sword was almost 3 times the size of the Sword of Calamity. In terms of length, it was similar to a normal person's body. The blue, sky sword was suspended in the air where Nangongzhi pointed the tip of the sword. At this moment, the sky sword was particularly condensed, and even the small lines on the sword's hilt and spine could be seen clearly. With a swing of the Sword of Calamity in his hand, the sky sword that was suspended above Nangongzhi's body rushed directly towards Uchiha Madara as if it had received an order. The sky sword itself was condensed from sword chi, and the sharp sword chi naturally gave the sky sword an unstoppable momentum. After Nangongzhi pointed the target for the sky sword, the huge sword instantly rushed out. Even the air was easily cut by the sky sword, and there was even an obvious flame tail behind the hilt of the sky sword. Chi! Accompanied by a harsh sound, the sky sword under the control of Nangongzhi directly rushed towards the direction of Uchiha Madara. The timing of Nangongzhi's attack can be said to be just right. At this moment, Uchiha Madara almost put all his mind on suppressing the struggle of the Hachibi and the Nine Tails, and directly pulling them out of Naruto and Killer Bee's body. If he dodged Nangongzhi's attack, it was very likely that Uchiha Madara's action of extracting the tailed beasts would be hindered or even failed, which was what Uchiha Madara didn't want to see. Therefore, when Nangongzhi attacked him, Uchiha Madara directly turned a blind eye to the powerful sky sword and focused on extracting the tailed beasts. Chapter 692. Hot blood splattered on the ground, and the scarlet color of the blood made the brown soil a bit dazzling. The blue, heavenly sword was inserted straight into Uchiha Madara's chest, and blood flowed along the heavenly sword to the ground. But whether it was Nangongzhi, the attacker, or Uchiha Madara, the expression on their faces was very strange at this moment. His attack directly hit Uchiha Madara and passed through his chest, but there was no joy on Nangongzhi's face. His body was directly hit, and even with the Senju Takuma cells in his body, he could not recover quickly, but there was no worry on Uchiha Madara's face. Instead, Nangongzhi's face was full of worry, and Uchiha Madara's face was full of joy of achieving his goal. All of this was because at this moment, the Gedo chain that extended from Uchiha Madara's abdomen had all been retracted back into Uchiha Madara's body. Along with the Gedo chain, the Nine Tails and the Hachibi also returned to Madara's body. Yes, before Nangongzhi's heavenly sword hit Uchiha Madara had directly pulled the Nine Tails and the Hachibi out of Naruto and Killer Bee. At this moment, the Gedo Mazo sealed in Uchiha Madara's body finally gathered the power of the Nine Tails and became a real complete existence. And such a powerful force was still accumulating in Uchiha Madara's body, and the process of the Jubi's completion has become completely unstoppable. The Jubi's violent and incomparably huge chakra emerged directly from Uchiha Madara's body, and this chakra brought infinite pain to Uchiha Madara's body and spirit, and constantly transformed Uchiha Madara's own body. His skin gradually turned a little pale, and his originally flamboyant black hair became completely white at this moment. A forehead protector with 2 horns of unknown material directly appeared on Uchiha Madara's forehead, and tied up his long hair. The white robe decorated with Magatama patterns also directly hung on Uchiha Madara's body. Compared to Uchiha Obito's strange 6 paths mode before, Uchiha Madara entered the 6 paths mode looked more majestic. Uchiha Madara stretched out his hand in front of him, and the 6 paths monk's staff appeared directly in his hand, and the 9 truth-seeking balls began to quietly float behind Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara held the heavenly sword inserted in his chest with his hand. Although the fierce sword chi was constantly cutting the skin on Uchiha Madara's hand, the small wounds were directly healed in a flash. Your strength is not bad, but unfortunately, you still lose to the will of heaven. Yes, Nangongzhi's heavenly sword was actually a powerful move that could kill Uchiha Madara, who didn't collect the 9-tailed beasts to form the 6 paths mode, but Uchiha Madara took the initiative to collect the 9-tailed beasts, which made Nangongzhi's heavenly sword a joke. Uchiha Madara directly pulled out the heavenly sword from his chest and gently touched the heavenly sword with the Six Paths monk staff in his hand. The heavenly sword, condensed by the sword chi, directly turned into smoke and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Nangongja, you are a good enemy, and I, Uchiha Madara, give you the recognition you deserve. So you don't have to directly become the nourishment of the 10 tails like the others, I grant you death. As if the gods had mercy, Uchiha Madara's eyes swept across Nangongja without the slightest emotion. Uchiha Madara pointed the Six Paths monk staff in his hand at Nangongja's direction and lightly shouted at Nangongja, Six Paths Immortal Art, Een Lightning School. The purple thunder directly extended from the head of the Six Paths monk staff like the branches of a big tree and directly shot in the direction of Nangongja. The thunder spread very quickly and covered a very large area. Although Nangongja began to prepare to dodge the moment he noticed Uchiha Madara's attack, his body was a little sluggish because he had consumed too much internal force just now. In the end, Nangongja was still hit by the purple thunder. The Six Paths Immortal Art itself was the pinnacle of the immortal art, and it had an extremely powerful attack power. After seeing Nangongja directly hit, Uchiha Madara didn't pay attention to Nangongja. Instead, he prepared to accumulate the power in his body and wait for the night to use the infinite Tsukuyomi with the help of the moon. But just as he turned around, Uchiha Madara also noticed that there was a change in the place where Nangongja fell. Slowly turning his head, Uchiha Madara was surprised to see that Nangongja, who had just been hit by the Six Paths Immortal Art, Een Lightning School, was now standing there with his tribulation sword. It's just thunder, what's there to be arrogant about? I have already experienced the baptism of more powerful thunder. At this moment, Nangongja was wearing a lion-shaped black heavy armor. Black thunder constantly flashed on the thunder heavy armor. The tribulation sword in Nangongja's hand was originally a sword of heaven's wrath. When it was born, it was not tolerated by the heavens and earth, and it directly sent down thunder to destroy him. But by chance, the tribulation sword directly found a chance to survive from the intolerable heavens and earth, and preserved it. The tribulation sword contained the seed of heaven's punishment thunder. In order to train his body, Nangongja had guided the thunder from the tribulation sword to his body more than once. Even now, Nangongja's body couldn't completely resist the corrosion of heaven's punishment thunder. But because he had been using heaven's punishment thunder to train his body, Nangongja's resistance to thunder could be said to be surprisingly high. Although the Six Paths Immortal Art, Een Lightning School was very powerful, it was still thunder that could be controlled. Heaven's punishment thunder was a thunder that was condensed from the power of the heavens and earth. The two were completely different. It was precisely because of this that Nangongja was able to withstand the attack of the Een Lightning School, and even stand here facing Uchiha Madara. You are really giving me more and more surprises. But you are destined to die in the hands of a living god. Chapter 693. Will Grave, Border Prison. A familiar yet tricky ninjutsu was once again used by Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara's Kage had the complete strength of Uchiha Madara. At this moment, after entering the Six Paths mode, all aspects of his abilities had been enhanced to the limit. Similarly, the Kage had also made great progress. The four Kages rushed towards Nangongja together with Uchiha Madara. Nangongja also struggled to pull out the tribulation sword that he had been using to support himself. Although he staggered a little, he still stood on the ground without taking a step back. To be honest, Nangongja's current physical condition wasn't good. Although his body had a certain resistance to lightning, it wasn't immune. Even if Nangongja was strong, he couldn't completely ignore an attack like the Six Paths Immortal technique, right? At this moment, Nangongja's body was a little numb because of the lightning. The Six Paths Immortal technique directly invaded Nangongja's body through such an attack. It wanted to block Nangongja's meridians to restrict Nangongja's movements. However, compared to a ninja who only knew how to extract a large amount of energy without caring about the tendons and veins, Nangong's internal strength had a more obvious effect on his body. Nangong's meridians had become very tough and wide under the nourishment of his internal strength for many years. Because of the protection of Li Yang's black armor, the amount of Six Paths Immortal technique that could invade Nangong's body was very little. Although the Six Paths Immortal technique's level of energy was very high, it didn't affect Nangong's much. The moment they rushed in front of Nangong's, the four Kages immediately disappeared into the void. Uchiha Madara directly held the Six Paths Immortal staff and knocked towards Nangong's. Perhaps because he had some experience in using long weapons, the trajectory of his attack towards Nangong's was quite exquisite. But what was more eye-catching was the unparalleled speed and power contained in the Six Paths Immortal staff. When Uchiha Madara first attacked, Nangong's could still see the trajectory of the Six Paths Immortal staff. But halfway through the attack, the Six Paths Immortal staff became blurry due to the powerful speed. Knowing that there was no way to see the direction of Uchiha Madara's attack with just the dynamic vision of his eyes, Nangong's slowly closed his eyes, and the sword domain that had been converging around his body expanded in an instant. However, the sword domain was a very powerful thing to deal with people who were weaker than him. But in the face of people who were similar or stronger than him, the role it could play was more of a supporting role. At this moment, Nangong's was using the sword domain to replace his eyes. Through this method, he could sense where Uchiha Madara's attack was going. Waving the Heaven's Tribulation sword in his hand, it was quite an understatement. Nangong's directly hit the Heaven's Tribulation sword in his hand with the Six Paths Immortal staff in Uchiha Madara's hand. Internal force instantly surged from Nangong's body, and a large amount of internal force directly attached to the place where the Heaven's Tribulation sword and the Six Paths Immortal staff intersected, sticking the two together. Although Nangong's swordsmanship was mostly focused on fast and powerful attacks, Nangong also had considerable attainments in soft and tough defensive swordsmanship. Putting his mind completely on the Heaven's Tribulation sword in his hand, the powerful force attached to the Six Paths Immortal staff was directly reduced by more than half. Seeing that he had taken the initiative, Nangong immediately took advantage of this opportunity to burst out a powerful force from his waist and directly broke through the huge force contained in the Six Paths Immortal staff in Uchiha Madara's hand, and wrapped a part of the force directly rushed towards Uchiha Madara's body. The powerful force directly acted on Uchiha Madara's body. In the face of a part of his own power and the full force of the eruption of Nangong, Uchiha Madara's body was involuntarily sent flying. However, after his body retreated a few steps in the air, Uchiha Madara directly turned his body in the air, and then directly rushed towards Nangong as if he was stepping on the ground. Come on! At this moment, Nangong was completely immersed in the battle with Uchiha Madara. The warlike blood hidden in Nangong's body was burning. Compared to the vigorous fighting spirit in his chest, Nangong directly forgot about the fact that he was in a bad state and was seriously injured. In other words, Nangong was now intoxicated by the battle with the powerful Uchiha Madara. Now that the battlefield was particularly empty, the ninja allied forces and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion could only passively stay on the battlefield and did not dare to join the battle. Tsunade and Orochimaru were hiding somewhere, and now, the only one who could fight was Nangong. On the empty battlefield, there was only Uchiha Madara and Nangong attacking each other back and forth. Uchiha Madara occasionally used ninjutsu and Nangong's flying sword energy directly lingered around the two of them, making anyone who was not strong enough dare to approach them. At this moment, whether it was the ninjas of the ninja allied forces or the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, they were all watching the fierce battle between Nangong and Uchiha Madara from a distance. Because they were not strong enough, they still couldn't see how thrilling the battle between Nangong and Uchiha Madara was, but the aftermath of the battle between the two had already told everyone that such a battle was not something they could get involved in. Not knowing when it started, one of the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion put his hands together on his chest and prayed silently. With one, the second, and the third, the ninjas of the Ninja Allied Forces and the disciples of the Blood Cloak Pavilion all joined in the prayer. Now, there was no one else who could still fight against Uchiha Madara except for Nangongja. If there was a definition for Nangongja's existence, perhaps the most appropriate theme would be, the last hope of the ninja world. In this battle, Nangongja won, and peace would be restored in the ninja world, and there would no longer be such a threat to the whole world. Nangongja was defeated, then the world would fall into the false infinite Tsukuyomi as Uchiha Madara planned, and enjoy the false peace. Chapter 694. Nangongja straightened his body. Even the heavy armor and his tired spirit did not bend his back. Blood seeped out from the gaps in the black armor, and even his hands that were holding the tribulation sword were trembling slightly. At this moment, Nangongja had reached his limit. Uchiha Madara and the shadow that he summoned with the Tomb of Samsara, border prison, attacked Nangongja again and again. At the beginning, Nangongja could still deal with it. However, as Uchiha Madara attacked endlessly, Nangongja's spirit and body became more and more tired. It was now the 29th minute of the battle between Nangongja and Uchiha Madara. In these 29 minutes, Nangongja was constantly squeezing his spirit and body, just to continue fighting with Uchiha Madara. In the end, Nangongja's mind became almost blank. Without the enthusiasm to fight, without the strong emotions to protect his cherished things, Nangongja's mind was almost empty. Even his consciousness became blurred. Even Nangongja himself did not know what kept him fighting like this. "I'm really tired." For some reason, such a thought suddenly appeared in Nangongja's mind. Nangongja's legs were as heavy as lead. Nangongja's head felt like it was being hit by a heavy hammer every minute and every second. It was painful and numb. The tribulation sword in Nangongja's hand had become a burden that weighed more than 1,000 pounds. Kacha, the sound of metal clashing rang out abruptly. Nangongja, who had been maintaining a standing posture, was now half kneeling on the ground. Nangongja had always regarded the tribulation sword as his important partner. At this moment, the sword's edge was lowered, but Nangongja's weak hand was gently supporting it. It seemed like it would really fall to the ground in a moment. Uchiha Madara did not continue to attack Nangongja. Even the shadow that he released outside his body was all taken back by Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara's eyes were no longer indifferent at this moment, and he no longer had the high and mighty demeanor of a god. At the end of the day, Uchiha Madara was also a warrior. Step by step, he fought a bloody battle to achieve his goals. Now that he saw Nangongja, such an enemy, fall in front of him, Uchiha Madara could not help but put himself in the role of Nangongja. If he was in Nangongja's position, he would also fight to the point where he could no longer move. Just as Uchiha Madara silently looked at Nangongja's half-kneeling figure on the ground, Black Zetsu, who had been hidden for a long time, finally revealed his figure. Black Zetsu stood beside Uchiha Madara and looked at Nangongja's half-kneeling figure on the ground. After a flash of surprise, he slightly bowed his body and said to Uchiha Madara, "Madara-sama. This guy is still breathing, if you don't mind, let me." Before Black Zetsu finished his words, Uchiha Madara directly turned his head and stared at Black Zetsu's eyes. Although Uchiha Madara's eyes did not express any obvious emotion at this moment, Black Zetsu knew that what he just said must have stimulated Uchiha Madara. "I do mind." Uchiha Madara's tone was like a hammer, directly spitting out from his mouth. After saying such words, Uchiha Madara directly turned around and walked toward the center of the slightly withered, ten-tailed sacred tree. Black Zetsu looked back at Uchiha Madara who had gone far, and then looked back at Nangongja who was half-kneeling on the ground. After a little thought, he also followed the footsteps of Uchiha Madara. "He's just an outlier who goes against the mainstream. When his plan is realized, such a small role will be nothing. Uchiha Madara walked to the center of the sacred tree and looked at the withered buds. Uchiha Madara slowly put his hand on the withered stem. His eyes were wide open, and even two scarlet blood flowed out of his eyes. Powerful fluctuations were directly generated from Uchiha Madara's body. Blood oozing out of the eyes was originally a manifestation of the extreme power of the eyes, but at this moment, the blood flowing out of Uchiha Madara's eyes became more and more, and there was no sign of stopping. Finally, the forehead protector that bound Uchiha's white hair directly burst at this moment. Without the protection of the forehead protector, a vertical line in the center of Uchiha Madara's forehead became clear. Slowly, the vertical line seemed to begin to split, revealing its true posture. It was a dark red eye, and on the dark red eye, there were Rinnegan lines and Tomo circles. This was a 9-Tomo Rinnegan, and also the most obvious characteristic of the ten-tailed column force. With the appearance of the 9-Tomo Rinnegan, Uchiha Madara's body began to surge with a large amount of powerful chakra. This was the chakra of the ten-tailed. The chakra quickly filled the withered vines and stems of the sacred tree, and the stems of the sacred tree, which had fallen to the ground, finally stood up again. This time, there was no need to extract chakra from anywhere. The chakra provided by Uchiha Madara alone has completely supplemented the needs of the sacred tree. In a very short time, the buds at the tip of the sacred tree have completely swelled, and it seems that only a small opportunity is needed to bloom directly. Uchiha Madara increased his chakra output, seemingly hoping to fill the last gap. Ten-tailed. Show your true posture to the world. Uchiha Madara shouted loudly with a fanatical look on his face. Looking at the appearance of Uchiha Madara, Black Zetsu's mouth quietly hung a smile. He split a part of his body and directly entered the stem of the ten-tailed, and inside the stem, the shadow quietly occupied the position of the heart of the flower. Finally, the flower at the tip of the sacred tree bloomed, pop, the crisp sound of blooming appeared, and the petals began to stretch their figures, showing their beauty, and in the stamen at the tip of the sacred tree, there was also a 9-Tomo Rinnegan. At the moment when the petals bloomed, the world, which was still daytime, was suddenly shrouded in darkness. A moon appeared in the sky, quietly releasing its blood-red brilliance. Chapter 695. The bloody brilliance directly enveloped the entire land, and the dark night sky continued to spread across the entire ninja world. The more the night sky spread, the more the bloody moonlight shrouded. Seeing that the whole world had suddenly turned from day to night, everyone began to panic instinctively. Countless people walked out of their houses and began to run in all directions, while those with power and influence entered the bunkers that they had built to protect their lives to hide. The bloody moonlight wasn't just a simple light, but it also contained spiritual power, directly invading everyone's spiritual world in a violent and unstoppable manner. The minds of everyone who was illuminated by the moonlight were directly pulled into the infinite Tsukuyomi. The people hiding in the bunker didn't dare to walk out for a short period of time. They could only tremble and wait for everything to end. After the flower at the top of the stem bloomed, the vine that had stopped spreading began to spread again. Uchiha Madara slowly took his hand away from the stem, and then relied on his own feet to communicate with the Jubi God tree directly through chakra. Uchiha Madara's hand began to quickly form hand seals. 6-path Senjutsu, God Tree World Descending. The power of chakra, 6-path power, and Rinnegan in Uchiha Madara's body directly burst out, using 6-path power to balance and amplify these energies. After such a ninjutsu was released, the speed of the Jubi God tree's extension accelerated again. Moreover, not only were these vines extending, but they were also constantly branching. The branches of various sizes directly covered the ground densely. This density of coverage directly made it more difficult for everyone to hide, and a large number of tree branches directly rushed towards everyone. As if it had found its target, the tree branches directly attacked the crowd. But strangely, there were so many tree branches, but they vaguely avoided all the disciples of the blood-robed pavilion. That's right, although the Jubi God tree world descending is very powerful and can autonomously identify the enemy, the way they identify the enemy is very stiff, that is, based on whether the enemy has chakra in their body. Once the target doesn't have chakra in their body, these people will no longer be the target of the Jubi God tree world descending attack. No matter how much chakra a ninja has in their body, once the Jubi God tree detects the chakra in their body, it will immediately entangle these people, constantly extracting chakra from these entangled targets, and then use this chakra to constantly strengthen its body. Looking at the world that has become quiet, and only the sound of the vines spreading out of the tree could be heard, Madara didn't know why his heart couldn't help but feel empty. Humans were like this. When they achieved the goal they had been fighting for a long time, their hearts would become empty. When Uchiha Madara directly trampled the entire ninja world under his feet, the emptiness in his heart became very obvious. Black Zetsu slowly walked in front of Uchiha Madara, bowed deeply to Uchiha Madara, and said to Uchiha Madara, "Congratulations to Madara-sama for achieving your wish, so these people don't understand now, but they will eventually know what a great thing Madara-sama has done." Although Uchiha Madara has always been full of confidence and domineering in everything, but to be honest, even if Uchiha Madara himself doesn't admit it, his heart is very empty. Pulling the entire ninja world into the infinite Tsukuyomi, bringing eternal peace to the ninja world, and proving that he is a person who surpasses Senju Takuma, such a goal was actually intentionally or unintentionally led by Black Zetsu to set up such a goal for Uchiha Madara. Listening to Black Zetsu's compliment, Uchiha Madara didn't move at all, but his eyes were staring at the red moon hanging in the sky with a bit of emptiness. At this moment, Black Zetsu was standing very close to Uchiha Madara. After Black Zetsu bowed his waist so that people couldn't see his face, and then he said to Uchiha Madara, "I don't know what Madara-sama is going to do with Uchiha Obito." After hearing Black Zetsu's words, Uchiha Madara's eyes finally recovered a bit, and then he said to Black Zetsu who was bowing in front of him, "Zetsu, do you still need to ask me such a stupid question?" Hearing Uchiha Madara's words, Black Zetsu bowed his waist a little more and said to Uchiha Madara, "Please tell me, Madara-sama." Uchiha Madara glanced at Black Zetsu and then said to Black Zetsu, "Uchiha Obito himself is just a clone of my plan. At that time, my vitality was exhausted, so I cultivated him to replace me in carrying out my plan. You are also involved in these things, so I don't need to say anything more. In order to completely control Uchiha Obito in my hands, I spent a lot of effort, and even specially arranged a good play of companions killing each other, so that Uchiha Obito became a puppet at my mercy. As for now, the White Zetsu army is almost wiped out. You don't have a suitable body to possess, so I'll give you this body. It's just a useless thing anyway." Listening to Uchiha Madara's words, Black Zetsu murmured, "Useless thing? That's a bit interesting." Uchiha Madara. Unlike the previous flattering tone, Black Zetsu at this moment was obviously very offensive. After hearing Black Zetsu's words, Black Zetsu felt that something was wrong and wanted to attack Black Zetsu with the six-path monk staff in his hand. Suddenly, a six-path monk staff appeared in one of Black Zetsu's hands and directly hit Uchiha Madara's abdomen. At this moment, the source of Uchiha Madara's power was the Jubi sealed in his body. All the chakra in his body were integrated into the Jubi's body, so when the six-path monk staff touched Uchiha Madara's abdomen, he was surprised to find that he couldn't move. After Black Zetsu saw that he had controlled Uchiha Madara, he also straightened his body. The eyes of Uchiha Obito, which had always been a bit dull, were full of spirit at this moment. "Is it you? Uchiha Obito?" Chapter 696. Originally, Uchiha Obito's spiritual and physical control was almost overwhelming, but Uchiha Obito's own will still maintained a certain level of consciousness, and everything that happened outside was seen by Uchiha Obito. When he was observing everything on the battlefield as a bystander who couldn't participate in it, Obito also found that there was something fishy going on. Just now, when Uchiha Madara was fully urging chakra to mature the ten-tailed tree of God, Uchiha Obito clearly felt that Black Zetsu's control over him was greatly weakened, leaving only a fragile barrier to prevent him from controlling his body. When he realized that the opportunity to get rid of Black Zetsu's control was in front of him, Uchiha Obito also gathered all his spiritual power and attacked the last barrier set by Black Zetsu again and again. It stands to reason that such an attack should be immediately noticed by Black Zetsu, but Black Zetsu, who was controlling his body, did not seem to care about such an attack at all, and did not even ask for help from Uchiha Madara. Although he didn't know what Black Zetsu was planning, Uchiha Obito still attacked the barrier with all his strength, trying to regain control of his body. Finally, under Uchiha Obito's repeated attacks, the barrier was finally broken. After breaking the barrier, Uchiha Obito found that Black Zetsu, who occupied his body, only left a spiritual shell in his mind. Without any effort, Uchiha Obito directly swallowed the consciousness of Black Zetsu and took control of his body. Disguising himself, Uchiha Obito began to talk to Uchiha Madara as Black Zetsu. Originally, Uchiha Obito could still control his emotions, but after hearing that the mutual attack between Kakashi and Rin was a trap set by Uchiha Madara to completely control him, there was no way to calm down the anger in his heart. After all, Uchiha Obito was also the ten-tailed column force for a period of time, and he was very clear about the pros and cons of sealing the ten-tailed in his body to obtain the six-path mode. For those who are inferior to him, the six-path mode is invincible, but for those who also have the six-path power, there are still ways to deal with the ten-tailed column force. All the six-path power in his body were gathered together, and a six-path staff was directly held in Uchiha Obito's hand. With the six-path staff against Uchiha Madara's abdomen, he cut off the connection between Uchiha Madara and Ten-Tailed Tail, so that Uchiha Madara had no way to freely control his body. However, Obito knew that this kind of control was only temporary. After losing the Ten-Tailed Tail, there was no way for him to defeat Uchiha Madara, so Uchiha Obito began to overdraw his life force to constantly enhance the power of the six-path power he condensed. The six-path power directly invaded Uchiha Madara's body, passed through the seal of the same root, and directly connected to the ten-tailed tail sealed in Uchiha Madara's body. After extracting a part of the chakra from each of the ten-tailed beasts, Uchiha Obito also realized that he could not hold on for too long. The Manjikyu Sharingan in his right eye immediately began to rotate, and the Manjikyu Dojutsu, Kamui, was immediately cast, and Uchiha Obito immediately disappeared. When Uchiha Obito reappeared, not only did he appear, but Watergate also stood directly beside Uchiha Obito. Yes, Uchiha Obito released Watergate, who was trapped in the Kamui space. Naruto, at this moment, the place where Uchiha Obito and Watergate stood was the place where Naruto was defeated before. Several iron rods were directly inserted into Naruto's joints, and the wounds that were originally gurgling with blood had stopped bleeding at this moment. The blood-stained and tattered clothes silently told Watergate what Naruto had experienced. Looking at his own child's miserable appearance, even the always calm Watergate had a majestic anger in his eyes. Just now in the Kamui space, when Uchiha Obito appeared, Watergate immediately launched an attack. In order to block Obito's attack and explain the current situation of the battlefield to Watergate, Uchiha Obito had to use some of his six paths power to restrict Watergate and explain the situation. Although in the end, Watergate finally listened to Uchiha Obito's words, but at the same time, it also consumed more than half of the six paths power that was keeping Uchiha Obito alive. Now, Obito has no time. Obito half-knelt on his body and put the six paths monk staff in his hand on Naruto's stomach. Originally, Obito hoped to pull out the Nine Tails chakra and put it back in Naruto's body to restore Naruto's vitality. But because the power of the 10 tails mixed with each other, the chakra that Uchiha Obito pulled out at this moment was extremely mixed. Uchiha Obito didn't know whether this chakra could restore Naruto's life, but at this moment, the situation was very critical, and this was the only way to try to save Naruto's life. Uchiha Obito didn't know why he desperately wanted to save Naruto's life at this moment. Was it because Naruto was very similar to himself, and he wanted to take revenge on Uchiha Madara who ruined his life, or was it because he felt guilty for his teacher, or some other reason? But now, there was no time for Uchiha Obito to figure out his inner thoughts. Uchiha Obito was simply following his own thoughts. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad, and when a man is about to die, his words are kind. Perhaps only when people truly accept their impending death, can they really start to selflessly do some good deeds that they never thought of before. After directly injecting the chakra mixed with the Nine Tails chakra from Uchiha Madara's body, Uchiha Obito finally lost the strength to move, and sat weakly beside Naruto. Watergate looked at Uzumaki Naruto very nervously, his eyes full of anxiety and worry. His wife, Uzumaki Kushina, also had the same experience of having her tailed beast extracted from her body. Would his son have to go through the same experience of being separated by life and death? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.